And in the next split second in my mind, I had an insight, an inspiration. I said, this man who's talking now is the greatest leader, the greatest tzaddik, the greatest Baal Ruach HaKodesh, the greatest teacher, the greatest mechanech, the greatest askim, the greatest builder of moisters, the greatest publisher of works of previous generations. Well, one of the greatest of the whole 20th century. But look, think of this farm that Rebbe gave out. Besides that he inspired people to give out. And this all in a split second. But at the end of the day, he is your personal best friend. And that you can say about everybody in the world. Anyone comes to the Rebbe is to him totally, his whole essence is given over to that person.
I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Herr, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a Chossid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Lew.
Aleichem Shalom, Rabbi Yosef.
Okay, so thank you very much for being here. We had some menias v'ikuvim when we tried to do it on the via the internet, but I think it's better because now we're doing it face to face, panim al panim. So,
however it happens, that's how it's supposed to happen.
Exactly, and that's actually, I feel like that's connected to you, because the way you ended up being who you are is because that's the way it was supposed to happen.
And you as well, and everybody. The real challenge is, what are we going to do with that situation? And for that, you need a Rebbe and a mashpia and a good friend, and you have to be honest with yourself. That's what you need in order to find, what do I do with everything that brought me to this second where I am now?
Okay, so I think we should talk about that. Maybe you can tell me a little bit what brought you to the Rebbe, like how'd that happen?
Well, my parents, Aleichem Mashallah, my father was born in Russia, but he came to America, and as a teenager in 1917, January, in Tevis, Asar Tevis, he was his day, and he studied to be a lawyer at Fordham University, it's the top law school. He was a brilliant, brilliant person, in order that he should be able to be self-employed and be able to keep Shabbos. And my mother, Allah Shalom, was born in New York, and I was born and brought up in Williamsburg, which was quite a Jewish neighborhood. It was much more diverse than it is today. And I went to Yeshiva Torah Vodaas, a good, frum school. And at the age of 15, that was in the summer of Tafshin Tesvav, 1955, my mother, Allah Shalom, sent us, probably the first time they could afford it. They really were very pressured financially. It was post-Depression years until the 50s, until the Tafshin Yuds. Sent us to camp, and in Williamsburg, Rabbi Moshe Lazar was a bacha. He was very active in the Aguda, and he was the whole Ruach HaChaim, all the
in the camp in
youth in Williamsburg itself. And he was also,
he wasn't a bacher in 770.
He was a bacha in 770, but his hafatzah, like many other people in those days of Lubavitch, was there in Williamsburg. He did wherever he did. He was being makar people.
He was from there.
In the Perchei Agudas Yisrael on Bedford Avenue, 616 Bedford Avenue, and for example, if they had they put out like a monthly little journal, a little deher, so called, but he would put in a Hasidic input. For example, they had an article about tzitzis. So it also had that it's a beautiful minhag to sleep with tzitzis. And like not Hasidim are not very aware of that. But in generally speaking, he is a person with Yiras Shamayim and true Avas Yisrael and a sense of. And my mother had a very high opinion of him. So we went to Camp Aguda because he was there.
But he was involved in Williamsburg because he was from there. So that's how he...
Yeah, he lived in Williamsburg, a few blocks away.
He was involved in all these organizations.
He was involved in youth activities. And
he was in Camp Aguda, so...
He was in Camp Aguda. I don't know what his role was even. Doesn't make a difference. He could have been the truck driver. He could have been the learning director probably. But he was there, and he had a spiritual position. He ran the Oinik Shabbos, the Shalosh Shudas, singing, Nigunim, things. And the next year, as is known, he came to the Rebbe with the idea of making a camp. And the Rebbe called him in. The famous stories about how the origins of Camp Gan Yisrael, it's almost 70 years. We're starting the 70th year this year. This is the 70th year, actually.
Gan Yisrael.
This summer. And so my mother heard that they're making that Rabbi Lazar is making a camp. So we went to Aguda, not because it was Aguda, but because it was Lazar. And the next year we went to Camp Gan Yisrael. I was a counselor. I was 16 and a half years old. And I was not the youngest counselor.
Okay.
And
that changed by the time I was a staff member there.
Between that, in Camp Aguda itself, a year earlier, meaning Tovshin Tezvav, that's when I really met. Lubavitch was sort of something hardly knew about. It's one of, there are a lot of groups. There were plenty of groups in Williamsburg as well that were just building up. And we knew that Lubavitch are people that are known for Avos Yisrael. But it was quite remote from my personal experience. In Camp Aguda, Itchmer Garari, Rabbi Garari de Mashpia today,
Montreal.
Montreal. So he was at the same group with me. And he told me that there's some
the Bachram in 770 would all go to Camp Aguda.
People went to there were very few choices of camps to go to. This is one of the handful of frum boys Jewish camps. And after Merkish Lichas, a lot of Bachrim would go for a week or two to these camps as guests. And obviously, while they were there, they did Havotas Hamayonas. One of the Bachrim that was there in Camp Aguda that summer was a Bacha by the name of Beryl Shemtiv. And so he was older by several years. He's 4 or 5 years older than us. And at night, we were waiting for a shiur. When Yaakov Teitelbaum used to give a shiur every evening. So Itchmer told me, look, we're starting a shiur in Tanya with Rabbi Shemtiv in the Geras HaTshuva.
And Beryl Shemtiv was there in the camp also.
He was a guest.
He was a guest in the camp.
After Merkish Lichas, I guess, he was there as a guest.
Yeah, I read in
a week or two.
I read in Reb Yael's Yumanim from Tafshin Yud. He writes also that he was in Agudas Yisrael for a few weeks.
That he goes to the camp.
Yeah, he wrote that in his...
All right, he went to the camp. And I consider myself very much, I was Torah Vodaas, Litvish, ideologically. The idea of going to learn Tanya to join something different than where I was quite comfortable was a very radical idea.
Your father was Litvish?
My father was... He never learned in actually yeshiva. He was a deep, deep Yerei Shemayim. And he also was the Yedei Sefer. He made his own siyum, Erev Pesach, as a b'chor. But his father, Pinchas, studied in Volozhin and Mir in 1890s.
Okay, so you're...
Tafresh Nun, and he studied and he knew closely. He was known by Reb Chaim Brisker and the Netziv, these people. It was very Litvish, the family.
Right.
But my mother's side, they were from Pressburg. Her father learned in yeshiva in Hungary, in Pressburg, and his father, by the Ksaf Soiva. So for generations, But it was, and the atmosphere in Torah Vodaas, it was, it was just, it wasn't anti anything, but it was. I sort of had an identity,
Right.
both at home and in my yeshiva, and in the groups in the Pech I used to go with, activities. I was not looking. I was looking to learn. That's nice. But so this idea was so radical that the kind of person I am, I said yes, Dafka, because it was so utter. He asked me, "Would you come?" And I went, and we learned that summer the whole Igeres HaTshuva. Marasim at the end. It was very beautiful. Must have been about 10, 15 Bochum that came. In one of the rooms there, I think there were mixed feelings from the camp authorities about it. I think they didn't want parents to say, a kid was chapped somewhere else, whatever, I don't know. I tell you one thing. There were things going on there which were, euphemistically speaking, a lot less than Tanya Shiurim. That was going in the evening. Things.
I thought the problems only started these days. I didn't realize they had problems then too.
They were of a different form,
Yeah.
and the Yetzer Hara wasn't born. The Reb Mendel Futterfar said about the Taivis, he said, the Nochash HaKadmoni was there in Gan Eden already.
Right.
So that's how I avoid. That's how I work to overcome all those external and internal impulses that we're supposed to overcome. So anyway, we had this shir. We finished it, and at the end of the summer,
So Beryl Shem Tov was giving the shir.
Bel Shem Tov gave the shir, made us see him. We learned through Igeres HaTshuva, and before Rosh Hashanah, which is a few weeks later, after we left camp, let's say a month later, he sent me, I still have it, a small little Shana Tova, and with a handwriting just like the Rebbe's handwriting, I subsequently realized, and a small black pocket Tanya. And we were invited to continue learning Tanya in the yeshiva. Now this was in a dormitory on a Wednesday night. It was, it was an open secret in the yeshiva, but it was outside the study time. It was after
They wouldn't allow it in the
after
yeshiva.
Limudei Choil, after going home, doing your homework. It was 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. There were shiurim going on. But even before that, or simultaneously, Itchmeir called me up and invited me to come to the farbrengen of the Rebbe on the second night of Chalamoyed Sukkos. He said that's a special occasion which is geared and associated with Bachrim from all yeshivas. It's not just for Chabad specifically.
And
And I said, fine, I'm coming. So that was the first
those
time.
years, the Rebbe's farbrengen on Chalamay would be for Bnei HaYeshiva.
It's all the years, and you see it in the Sichos, and even you see in Poland, it was in Tomchet Mimim, but the Rebbe farbrengen, that all-night farbrengen, 11-hour farbrengen or something, was Chalamoyed Sukkos for Talmidim, for Tamimim. It wasn't for Anash, especially. So, and it's now going to be 70 years, the coming Chalamoyed Sukkos,
Wow.
that I saw the Heilige Eugen and heard the Rebbe's first Sikha. It was really, in a sense, when you look back, you see key moments. It was a transitional moment. It was a key moment in my life. I said l'chaim to the Rebbe. I was there a couple of hours.
What was it like? What was that moment like?
It was.
seeing the Rebbe?
I was a frum boy. I went to shul every morning. I was in Torah Vodaas. I was happy. I had a teacher, Rabbi Palm, Rabbi Avram Palm, was my teacher in the 11th grade, and he was the best teacher I had. It was really, really ahead of his time, and he was a good person. And
He's a big figure.
He also he overcame resistance. He went to see the Rebbe at moments when his own circles. He was a person with. He invited us to his house for Malav Malk in groups of two. He was ahead of his times, I think, in how to relate to American Bochum. I was finished that year then, and just going into Rabbi Shapiro learning Yevomis that year. And but I was also an American boy, and I was into sports and this and that. And that day was a turning point. That night, that farbrengen, was a turning point in my life. I don't like to bring in Klippa Sheba Klippa, but that was the day that the Dodgers won the World Series for the first time. And the whole farbrengen, which was in the Sukkah, there was, and this Brooklyn, the Heights was very, very much Dodger country. And
the stadium
there
was
were
in Crown Heights.
honking horns, the entire farbrengen in the background. And to me, it was an end of something which is empty and meaningless. Just something to waste time with, maybe harmless, but it's certainly meaningless. And the beginning of everything. But it took me years to actually appreciate that. And it was encouragement of people like Shmeir and others. And there we had, there were several groups in Torah Vodaas. I mean, Rabbi Nachman Tzudak was a bocher. He had a class. That wasn't mine. Like Yudel Krinsky, he had a class. The others, Moshe Bogomilsky, I think, maybe, was himself. And
he's a student
I
in
studied
Torah Vodaas.
most of the 2 years that
Was
I...
Moshe Bogomilsky a student in Torah Vodaas?
Earlier,
okay.
He was.
So he already
but he
has
had
all-
a connection,
Okay.
but from a family connection there. And the person that I learned with, almost all of those 2 years, was Rabbi Geshem Mendel Gerelik, alav shalom. And he had a very, very profound effect. He would tell stories. He would bring tapes. Bring a tape then wasn't a little iPhone or something, or it was a Wallensack, one of these big, heavy tape recorders. He'd play the Niggin Hanedas Halolu as sung in 770. The Arum gave a lot of this. He told stories about the Rebbe, and you saw his love for that. And he taught the Chossidus, it was Tanya that we were learning, and a classmate of mine who lived on the same street, the next block, Rabbi Yosef Nachman Rattenberg, very, very big goyin, and he was very close to Lubavitch, and he had a kesher with the Rebbe. He's a dayan. He needs a refuah shlema. He's in Baltimore for many decades. But he and I were chaverim. We're very, very close friends. And we went to the Tanya Shiurim, and we would walk home and walk Geshem Mendel to the bus stop on Roebling Street. It was late at night, starting at 11 o'clock at night maybe when we got there, after the Shia. And we insisted on paying the 15 cents or whatever it was, his car fare, that he paid for the bus. But he would stand there, and sometimes 1 and 2 or 3. There were times we were there till maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And he was talking. He had to push it away. So that was one thing besides the shiurim. Also, when everything was koshel bracha, which I'll come to in a minute, the first time I actually met the Rebbe face to face was a few months later by koshel bracha. But the Rebbe would give for Torah Vodaas in one of these half-gallon bottles, and he would pour in some wine and add some more, and then they would make a farbrengen, and with good gashmias in a nearby shul. I remember, I never counted, but I can imagine there were anywhere between 50 and 75 bachrim that would come.
This is
to
after
these
every, so
farbrengens.
after every Yom Tov.
After the time the Rebbe gave it could be a few weeks later.
Right.
You know, they worked out what was a suitable time. And so sometimes Gersh Mendel would also farbrengen there in Williamsburg. He was generally pretty careful. Didn't take mashke very much or anything, but one time he did, and it was very interesting. What he said to the Rav, who was giving us his apartment or something. Anyway, so that had a big effect. Already that first year, Tovshin Tes Zayin, I was at 7 farbrengens. Tes Zayin. Simchas Beis Shoeva, which I mentioned.
That was the first.
And then there was Yutes Kislev, which was in the Gay Heart Ballroom, which was on the corner of Nostrand and Eastern Parkway. And then there was Yud Shvat, also in the same hall probably. And then there was Purim. Now all of those 4 were during the week. You can take a bus there. But then I also walked on Achron Shel Pesach. And also on second day Shavuos. And Yud Beis Tammuz. So, Achron Shel Pesach.
Who would you walk with?
In Williamsburg, there were a lot of families. Over the years, the Blasovskis lived in Williamsburg. To walk with them, later years, Shabbosim, the whole family would walk. Simcha Zerkin lived in Williamsburg. Uriel Zimmer, but he didn't walk. He was unfortunately disabled. But we had a farbrengen probably a few years later than that, twice a year, like Shviur Shel Pesach at night, and Shabbos Chol Hamoed Sukkos or something, about Pesach and Sukkos, in Reb Uriel's house in Rutledge Street.
And he was part of Maskidus, like he was.
He was.
He worked for the Rebbe, right?
He worked for Merkez. I don't know if that was his only job. I don't know. Never. He's buried in London, actually, in Enfield Cemetery.
There's an article in the Her we did on him.
Yeah,
a few years ago.
I remember, but I remember the article. I don't remember the details. I remember him.
Right.
I remember many things that he said at these farbrengens, because he was close also with the Satmarov, and he used to, he used to bring messages sometimes. But so there was a group. There was Shmuel Lazar. Moshe Lazar had a brother whose birthday was Yud Aleph Nisan, I remember, and he lived in Williamsburg. So he was like a Lubavitch, like the shishas from the food company. They had a connection. A lot of these people. You're talking here about the 1950s and early 60s. The Yuds and the Chofs. It was not many years after Yud Shvat. They do the Friedrich Rebbe from Vienna or something, some of them.
So you're at 6 farbrengens that year.
I don't remember who I walked with.
Right, but you were at 6 farbrengens that first year.
7.
7 farbrengens.
There was every Yites, Kislev, Yishvat, Purim, Achron Shel Pesach. Then there was Shavuos, which was a very, very historic farbrengen. It was right after the tragedy of the Adar Hamisha, of the terrible tragedy in Kfar Chabad.
The massacre.
And the Rebbe announced that farbrengen that he's going to be sending shluchim, 12 shluchim he sent to Eretz Yisrael that summer, and that's a whole chapter in itself. And then Yud Beis Tammuz was also very historic, and a thing which is not known. It was the beginning of Camp Gan Yisrael, and the Rebbe went to camp on Zayin Tammuz that year. Before the first trip went out, it was in Ellenville, the first Gan Yisrael ever. Now, what's not that well known, it was Yud Beis Tammuz, if I remember correctly, was on a Thursday, pretty sure. And at the end of the farbrengen, it must be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, Reb Moshe Lazar comes over to me. He knew me from Williamsburg. He said,
You were part of the camp.
I was going to be a counselor,
Right.
and the very first staff meeting of that camp, the beginning of the staff meeting was an address by Rabbi Chadakov. It was in 676 Eastern Parkway, the dining room of the yeshiva. And Rabbi Chadakov came in and he took a look around the room.
Where is that? 676 Eastern Parkway.
Well, a few houses.
It's between Brooklyn and New York.
Pardon?
It's on the side of 770 between Brooklyn and New York.
This was a staff meeting.
It's on the side of 770 between Brooklyn and New York. That's where it's on the side of 770
between Brooklyn and New York, yeah. But that was where the dormitory, and there was another dormitory in Lincoln and Troy as well. But this was like the main dormitory. The dining room was there. And
I once got a ride with Rabbi Avram Shem Tov from the Oil, and he was telling us about how the Rebbe visited the dorm.
The Rebbe?
How the Rebbe visited the dorm on Lincoln.
When there was flu, Erev Yom Kippur.
No, a different time. The Rebbe just did a surprise visit.
Right.
And as he was driving us, as he was telling us the story, he made a sharp right and drove us to the dorm to show us which house it is that the Rebbe was there. Anyways, go ahead.
Right. So Rabbi Chadakov walked in. It was a Friday afternoon. I was still in Torah Vodaas, yet for more than a year beyond that. But I came there for this meeting. And Rabbi Chadakov looked around the room, and they were all like basically young people. 17, 18-year-olds. Those were the older counselors. And he told a story that the Frierdiker Rebbe once spoke to a group of Askonim maybe it was in Riga, and he said, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, you are fantastic people with a lot of koiches. He says, you have one chisoren. You're young. Aber mit der Zeit wird sich das ausgleichen. Time will clear that as well.
Right.
So he said that to us as well over the years. I thought it was a very beautiful way to begin that.
I was watching a farbrengen, Yubis Tammuz, farbrengen, and the Rebbe said, Lamed Beis, the Rebbe says the opposite. The Rebbe gives a whole sikh about Dafke the young can do Hafatzas HaMayonis. And then in the next sikha, the Rebbe says, and even the older people can also, because they can act young. So the Rebbe flipped it.
There was like a Jew, not Chossid at all, but he said that he met a lot of Chabadniks. He said, they're all 40 years old.
Right.
They said, what do you mean? He says, the 20-year-olds are wise like a 40-year-old, and the 60-year-olds are energetic like a 40-year-old. Anyway,
Right.
So let's come back to that farbrengen. After the Yud-Beis campus, and this was a couple of weeks later. It was days before camp starting.
The meeting.
Camp's about to start.
The meeting with Rabbi Chadakov. Yeah.
No, the meeting with Rabbi Chadakov was a few weeks before
Okay.
camp. It was the first staff meeting.
So you're going back to when the Rebbe...
Now it was Yud-Beis Tammuz. And at the end of that, and it was a very fantastic farbrengen. I think Zalman Shazar was there as well, but the Maimah, Havaya B'Liv Oizo, it's my favorite, it's one of my favorite Yud-Beis Tammuz, my modem. Very, very special Maimah. Very reich, and about the Rambam. Anyway, not that I followed it then, but the subsequent, I learned it. But I was there, it was an experience. At the end of that farbrengen, I think it was a Thursday night, and it must have been 10, 15 minutes. Maybe I was going to go back to Williamsburg with Moshe Zar. I used to take buses anyway. I used to go home by public transport. Mm-hmm. And when I was in Torah Vodaas, I never was late the next morning. And that meant after Shacharis, even if I slept 3 hours that night, because I didn't want them to think that somebody who associates himself with Lubavitch is using that as a way to miss a day of
and at that point, you're already considering yourself associated with Lubavitch.
In Yud Zayin, after camp, in Tez Zayin, they knew I was close. I had a circle of people that became Magidei Shiurim, a lot of these types of people, but we were close to each other, and people knew I had it. Mm-hmm. In fact, a few years later, I met somebody who I was very close with in Torah Vodaas, and he said to me, he wasn't blaming me. So I just want to understand, why did you become Lubavitch? What was missing?
Mm-hmm.
What was wrong with what you had before? So I said I did not drop a single thing by coming to Lubavitch. I said, on the contrary, I said the same tefillin became a different tefillin. The same Gemara became a different Gemara. They said all the experiences of before were given a completely deeper meaning. I said, so it's not that I abandoned or I left anything that I had before. It was the context. It was the Rebbe showed how it's like the Moida Ani Sicha and Yonush Torah Chassidus. It's the idea that Chassidus and Chabad, both in learning, in Haskanas, and everything, it introduces a person to a deeper dimension.
Right. In Yonush Torah Chassidus, it says that it's the Pnimius. The Chassidus is the
Torah,
Pnimius.
it says that every area of Torah becomes deeper and different as a result of the way you look at it, al pi Chassidus. It's not one of the four Pshatim is Dirush Soid. It's Yechidah, which penetrates everything. The Shemim of Hapaya. It's so, and this is in life generally. It's a way of looking at life. It's a way of seeing meaning in things which otherwise would just be, perfunctory, just regular. And anyway, so Moshe Zah comes to me at the end of this farbrengen. It must be 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, that the Rebbe said that he wants a minyan to go to Camp Gan Yisrael on Friday and have a Suda there, so that the beginning of Gan Yisrael should be Yud Beis Tammuz.
On Friday.
I heard it Thursday night. He asked, would you be ready to come tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock? It means 7 hours later.
Right.
And I was here. And I went. That Friday, I went, and we had 10 people there. I remember the Lifshitz brothers. I remember some of the people. We had a little Suda there. And bench, we got back just before Shabbos. Now, the Rebbe himself also began the camp, and not also, this is the Kra. The Rebbe started the camp by coming there before the boys came out.
To visit.
I didn't know that. I was then in Williamsburg,
right. You didn't
playing
know
ball or whatever I was doing, and I was very upset. They didn't have the telephone connection like you have today so much. Anyway, so I missed that one. So we were in Gan Yisrael, myself and 2 younger brothers, that summer, as a counselor. And in Yud Zayin, I already saw myself as like a Lubavitch.
But before that, you already went to Kesha Bracha and you saw the Rebbe.
Oh, 1 minute, yeah. Kesha Bracha was Achron Shel Pesach Tez Zayin. And the Rebbe said, Bel Shem Tov took me and Rabbi Rottenberg, Yossi Rottenberg was his name, to the Rebbe. After the farbrengen, I don't know why, but they went upstairs to the Zal for Ma'ariv. I don't remember.
There was another minyan while the Rebbe was downstairs.
No, the Rebbe had the farbrengen, and everyone took Dalet Koisus. It was Lebedik and Freilich farbrengen. It was with a tremendous amount of energy and chayas, even as Achron Shel Pesach farbrengens go, Shiach Suda. And I didn't know the workings. As far as this is the first time I was ever at a kosher bracha, anything like this. What I know is that they said Ma'ariv will be upstairs. That's in the Zal. It was packed, but I don't know how many people. It was packed, and the Rebbe was on the far corner later for kosher bracha after Ma'ariv. So the table was there in the way. You went around the Ma'ariv, the west, that which goes to the Chossid where the sukkah is. You went there. There was a bit of a space, and then in the Durham, in the south, leading to the Cheder Sheni, and that area, the Rebbe stood, and there was a table, and the Rebbe gave a kosher bracha. It's nothing like the crowds that were there 10, 20 years later, obviously. But there's still hundreds of people. And you went out through the Cheder Sheni in 770. Baal Shem Tov took us over to the Rebbe. And he said, "Those zwei Bocheren von Torah Vodaas, Rattenberg und Lew, und sie willen beten a Brochas, es sollen sein chassidische Bocheren." This was without consulting us whatsoever. He said, here are two students of Torah Vodaas, Rattenberg and Lew, and they want to ask the Rebbe for a bracha. They should be Chassidish Bocheren. So the Rebbe said, Rattenberg and where? What's the other name? He said, Lew. So the Rebbe said, Ich bin maskim, nur sie darf maskim sein. I agree to the bracha, but they have to agree as well. And 3 times in my life that I had very varying situations where the Rebbe told me, I'm giving you special energies. And I think it applies to everyone, whether the Rebbe said it to you directly or not. Anyone who wants it. But it's what you do with it that really matters. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll jump and tell you the second time.
Yeah.
Was when I was actually going to Term Chetmimim, which was the beginning of Tafshin Yud Ches, after a year of Yud Zayin, when I consider myself, and I was known by the Rosh Hashivas in Torah Vodaas also as Lubavitcher. But the trajectory was, I would be a frum lawyer, very close to Lubavitch, that type of thing, coming to farbrengens, hang around with the guys, maybe living somewhere in Newark or something, and learning Daf Yomi. I don't know what I would have been doing. But Lubavitch. Mm-hmm. And also in Yud Zayin, I had my first Yechidus'n, I'll come to that. Then at the end of Gan Yisrael, Yud Zayin, I wrote to the Rebbe coming to Tom Chetmimim, and before HaKofis on Simchas Torah, there was a farbrengen. Whenever everyone went to the Tahalucha, to all the different shuls to help him with Sameach, and the Rebbe didn't start HaKofis till after they came back. HaKofis wouldn't start till about after midnight. At that farbrengen, I approached the Rebbe, and I said the words, Ich will beten a bracha, ich soll haben Hatzlacha in Term Chetmimim. I want to ask for a bracha that I should succeed in Term Chetmimim. And the Rebbe said, Amen, Amen, or Amen, Amen, whatever, the double Amen, he said. And I gave L'chaim, and as I was withdrawing, like walking backwards from the Rebbe, when I was a few feet away, he looked after me, and on his Rebbe's left side, and he said, "Darfst etwas euch tun dazu." You also have to do something about it. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you got a double bracha, but it's not going to work if you're not going to do something about it.
So this is a general approach of the Rebbe.
Pardon?
This is a general approach of the Rebbe. The Rebbe gives the keiches, but we have to do something about it. I think that's what the Rebbe said the first night, Yud Shvat, Tafshin Yud Aleph. The Rebbe said that we're going to help. The Rebbe is going to help, but the Aveda is for us.
Before we can, he gives much. Yeah. So now in Yud Zayin, I walked regularly Shabbos with Moshe Lazar. That's who I walked with. Mm-hmm. Just remember, that's who I walked with on Achon Shal Pesach and Shavuos. And Moshe Feller later, he also I got to know him
He's also from Williamsburg?
He was.
No, he's from Minnesota.
He's from Minnesota, but he was studying in Torah Vodaas in the dormitory,
okay.
so he lived in Williamsburg, and subsequently married my late sister. Allah Shalom.
That's he's your brother-in-law.
He's my brother-in-law. Yeah. Now, in Yud Zayin, we walked Shabbos Mavorchim, obviously, but also many times when there was just rumors there might be a farbrengen, like Shushan Purim Cotton, Pashtus Kisisa. I remember being there Pashtus Noyach, which was Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. It was not a given that there's going to be a farbrengen, but there was the Maimah Ashechem Yisrael, Omer Bekiva, and so that was Yud Zayin. About a couple of months before my birthday is Chof Adar Rishon, and the Bachim that I was learning Tanya with, maybe they saw it, or it was Gershon Mendel maybe, they asked me if I wanted to go to Yechidus'n for my birthday, get a direct bracha from the Rebbe, and this was like a major step to actually go and see the Rebbe. In fact, well, many Bachim of Torah Vodaas went, but they would go to see other Rabbeim and Rosh Yeshivas, Gedolim, etc., etc. You know, it was like a done thing. People went for brachas to different people.
But you're saying for you,
for me, I didn't go. I didn't go to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. I didn't go here. I didn't go to any of those. I saw them. I maybe went sometimes to the Tish or to Ashia or something. But I didn't entertain the thought of having to go to them as an individual asking for a bracha. And this became a very special thing. And thank God, you had to make appointments anyway, months in advance for Yechidus'n. Rabbi Charkov had this little pad, and he wrote in, for the next few months, all the nights that there were 3 nights a week, Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. The thing is, with all the Rabbeim, later years from Chav Hey, it was only Sunday and Thursday. And my Yechidus'n was on a Tuesday, the first Yechidus'n, but I was starting months before, preparing. And the preparation was, they invited me to come once a week. Besides Wednesday, there was the Shir Tanya in Torah Vodaas. I would come to 770, I think it was on a Tuesday, and learn.
So the Bachrim suggested that you do this, or?
Yeah, I would learn with Gershon Mendel, he was my, like, the mashpia there.
Right.
I'd come. I remember it was a time that he wasn't there for some reason during the preparation. I would go once a week, and we learned Bosi Legani Tovshin Yud Beis, and they suggested that I learn it Baal Peh as well. And they told me about Ato, which is Igor Talmidei HaYeshiva, which was formulated by the Rebbe. Which it was not necessarily for Tomchei Tmimim Bochrim. It was generally people who took on themselves, wash negavasa by the bed, sleep with tzitzis, wear woolen talis cotton. There were certain, probably chitas. That's when I started a lot of the minhagim in those couple of months.
Preparing for the Yechidus'n, you got...
In preparation for Yechidus'n. And then...
the Ato was like a formal group then, or was like was Ato like a formal group then, or was
it's a group which is mentioned in the
Rebbe I know it's mentioned, but I'm saying what was like they got
it was a famous. I never heard of it before then.
So was there like a meetings or anything, or was it just
no.
You were part of it? There's something that you associated with.
It was. I think it was something like chitas. You undertook something.
Right. You undertook. Okay.
It was like an association. I don't know if they ever had meetings. A good question, It would have been in Eretz Yisrael where it was big,
Uh-huh.
Lefi Yerech, relatively speaking. The main thing is I took on things for the Yechidus. And then I had a heavy session. Gershom Mendel, he told me that the difference between Polish Rebbe and Chabad or other people is with others you can be an onof. You say you don't. You go to the Rebbe, you tell him everything. Your milas, your chesroinus, you say everything. Your problems and your achievements as well. And he also said, if the Rebbe tells you to sit down, you don't sit down. And that I had a big problem with. I said, it was beforehand, and he was trying to explain it to me. In the end, he just was frustrated.
What was your problem with it?
If a man like I was looking at the Rebbe tells you, walk down the street, you walk down the street. He says,
So your problem is, how could I not listen if the Rebbe tells me to sit?
Yeah, well, and he screamed at me or something. Well, he said, that's the minute. That's what you do. And by the way, just an aside, parenthetically, the Rebbe was once going out to his car. I think that Simpson was the driver in the earlier years, and it was snowing where it was icy on the ground. And the Rebbe told him, the driver, to go in first, not to go around because it was slippery. And he just stood there, didn't move. And the Rebbe grabbed his shoulder and said, "Folgen is hecha von alles." Obeying is bigger than everything. Anyway, that's what I heard. When I went into Yechidus, actually, and I wrote to the Rebbe, they told me I should write that I learned Bosi Lagane Balpa. I wrote that I'm learning Yevomis. I was coming in there expecting a faher.
Mm-hmm.
So before that, I was looking at that Maimah. I looked at the Gemara that I'd been learning in Yevomis that week. I was ready, they said, write this, write that, that I'm doing this. So the first word that Rebbe said to me was, "Sitzt." Sit down. And of course I didn't, because that was the protocol, but I was...
Gershom Mendel
he told me...
instilled it in you.
Yeah, well, if he told me that's what you do, I just wanted to understand,
Right. Okay.
How does that fit in? But my knees were wobbly ready anyway. Just to meet the Rebbe was a very, very one-on-one. And in that Yechidus, I asked the Rebbe about. I was very, I was learning and I learned Chassidus, but I was doing pretty well in secular as well. And the plan, the unspoken plan, with that I would follow my father, Alav Shalom, footsteps, be a frum lawyer. That's all. You would go to what the Bachram did. They would go to a night school in Brooklyn College. It was not. It wasn't mamish. It was college, but it was more like what you call a technical school today to learn a skill. People learned accountancy. They learned law. They learned something for a panosa. That's what they did. The Rebbe was the person who really showed the world that it's not necessary, that you're not gaining, not in intellectual development, and not in panosa even. That's not a key to those things.
Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, because I think there are people that have this question a lot, like, you need so much money to live, especially today. How are you going to do it if you don't have the proper credentials or secular education?
The secular education that people get, I haven't examined these statistics. I did many times. The last time was probably maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I haven't in the last few years. But it's consistently that when they say that X percent of college graduates get jobs easier than others, let's say 85, whatever the number they'll say, together with that they will say that 85% of them, or 90%, are not employed in areas which they studied at university. I'm not talking about someone who goes for a specific profession.
Right.
Someone wants to be a doctor or whatever it is, they're going to it. People, they study because they think they're going to. This is their ticket to a job. It's not. It develops your mind. It's not. The BBC in England, it made a series of programs about genes, about genetic questions. And the man who made it was a man called Professor Jones. He's from Wales, I think, and he was in University College London. I'll tell you, I worked with him. He made a series of 6 programs about different aspects of the genetic composition of people. And one of them was about weddings, about marriage, and the combination of genes, and about what they call doyashorim today, about genetic diseases and preventing them. Each one had one word name. This was called roots, and it was sold in the whole world. And so he met me a few times and interviewed me about how shidduchim works in the film community. But the actual program, which I didn't see, but the actual program, they had. I spoke to him in my office, all the interviews, but on the camera, visually, they showed a chasana. We went to a chasana in London, got permission from the chasana kala. And we sat together, the professor and I, and they showed us sitting at the wedding, talking, and they played what we had discussed in the office. So what were we actually talking about? We're talking about knowledge and education. And he told me that the boys who went to yeshiva in his classes in London are streets ahead intellectually in understanding all the concepts that they're learning. He said their minds are much more developed than anybody else. There's a non-Jewish professor in England. There isn't that high a percentage of Jews. He said every time I have somebody who came from yeshiva, they're sharp, their minds. It's developing the mind. Now, if you need a certain area of expertise, whatever field a person wants to go into, you can do that. You can do that at the age. You have to start that at the age of 6. The Rebbe says in Nasicha.
Yeah.
You worry about a parnasa when the kid's there. He shouldn't have to become a shoeshine boy. You can do that when you're 15 or 20. Whenever it takes weeks or months, a year or two even.
One of the integral components of being a chassid are the chassidische Yomim Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better Chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Ikr needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der Herr. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidische Yom Tov. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have this set. Go to derher.org/Our Days. Order your set today and start living with the Chassidische Yom Tov. There's another component to all of this, not just that whether or not you need the credentials to get a job, but I think like what you're mentioning, that in American culture, there's a whole obsession with parnasa from when the kid is 5 years old, and that's, what track is he going to go on to, or she's going to go, and that's like ingrained in American culture, and it's like this pressure that's put on them since they're little kids. How will you eventually make a parnasa? I think the Rebbe was saying, maybe you can tell me, but I believe that the Rebbe was saying that the whole way we get parnasa is from the Eibishter. So we have to do what the Eibishter wants to get the parnasa, and we should be obsessed with the Eibishter, and he'll figure out the parnasa later, not be obsessed with how you're going to make a parnasa, because that's counterintuitive. I think that's also part of it. It's not only the dangers or the issue of college, but also that to refocus on getting on the source of the parnasa, which is the Eibush, and therefore if you're supposed to be in yeshiva, or whatever the situation is. Does that sound right?
100%. I had an answer from the Rebbe to this effect, which I'll come to in a minute, about going to college.
That's how you started.
But you said we should talk a little bit about the secular education. I worked my first 10 years. The Rebbe said a number of times, both to Rabbi Sudak and to my shver, because I'd come home sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to teach at 9 o'clock.
You came home from what?
The Rebbe wanted me to teach. When I went on Shliach in England,
the
Rebbe said that part of my work, even though I was working basically with youth, adult education, and students, I was like Chabad house and Chabad on campus. Those didn't exist, really. Mm-hmm. I traveled around the country to the different campuses. I had a mailing list of almost 1,000 students at that time in the late 60s and early 70s. And I dealt with many students who went through times where they couldn't get a job. And those who got jobs, very, very often, it was not in the field that they had studied, including Jonathan Sachs. He's one of the students who went to. He became a rabbi.
He was a student that you met.
He was. I met him in Chav Ches 2.5 years after I came to England, but we were very, very close. The point is, Parnasa comes from the Eibush, as you say. I'll come to the zettel of the Rebbe to me in a moment. And even B'derech HaTeva, it needs a bit of discernment to understand that it's motivation, it's developing the mind, it's working, and that gets a person a good position. I'm talking here about getting an employment. Some people want to go into business and want to, it's also something which, the more you know, of Limudei Kodesh, Lahavdil, the more it helps, because it develops the mind in a much deeper way than people think. I know somebody in our community, so he was learning only Kodesh. This happened to many people, and they wanted to get a qualification and go to university at some stage. It was 18 or whatever. And in order to take the necessary exams, you had to go through a school. And I'm a principal of a high school of girls where they do these exams, so I can facilitate this study, which I did many times. And this bacher, he did about 4, which people would do after 5 years in high school. It's a 5-year course. The last 2 is mainly towards the exam. The first 3 are achana. And he did it in 6 months, maybe, or less. And did all the different subjects, and he got an A star. That's higher than A in every single one. Then we said, "You want to do the advanced studies?" And he said, "No, it was boring." Mm-hmm. So I said, "Maybe you got a better education than you thought."
Right.
What you did, now you want to go into a field, you want to study it? Study it. Your mind was developed. That's what really matters. Mm-hmm. There's so many examples. There was another Baal Tshuva, a doctor, and he had a son, a brilliant. He is a brilliant scientist now, but he applied for a grant the Japanese government gave a certain small number of people who are genius. They got a scholarship to spend 5 years for free studying in Japan. Advanced science. And this person was one of them, this son, who was today a professor. And he didn't know Japanese. That was part of it. So you learn Japanese now. Took a couple, 2-3 months, or even less. I don't know what it was. That which is, if your mind is developed, and then you decide which area you want to focus on, and you do focus, then nowadays those who are discerning, you see what goes on at universities.
Yeah.
Never mentions this too. The social life, the political life, they're being used.
Sure.
They're being used, and
so a Shliach wrote after Simchas Torah on October 7th and the demonstrations on campus, the anti-Semitic ones. So Shliach wrote, "Today is a good day to ask me why I don't send my kids to college."
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So what did the Rebbe tell you about your college?
So when I went to Yechidus'n, let's come back to my first Yechidus'n, which was Yud Ches Chai Oder Tovshin Yud Zayin.
This is the first Yechidus'n.
Yeah. I was in Torah Vodaas, and Rebbe spoke to me then, ear. In Yiddish, there's a different word. When you say you, familiar and not familiar, it's in many languages. It used to be in English.
Thou.
Thou, that's right. Thou is personal, and you is plural or respectful.
Mm-hmm.
And thou is du in Yiddish, and you is ear in Yiddish. In French, you have
you
and tu.
Oh, so you is du, no?
You is eich.
Okay. Interesting.
You is plural, and thou is you as an individual.
Okay.
Thy. And so the Rebbe spoke to me. Das was ihr schreibt. That which you're writing, formal. That was the only Yechidus'n. I was in Yechidus'n, Baruch Hashem, many times. It was the only one that the Rebbe said.
The formal way of ear.
It was before I came to Tamchat Tamimim. And I wrote to the Rebbe about the future, and this was a major Mesiras Nefesh. It must have been under the influence of my Lubavitch Mashpiyim, about whether to take a 1-year break. Really, today, it's done by many people, secular, non-Jewish even. In England, they call it the gap year. After you finish high school, you take a year out to find yourself or something, and then you go to university. But so I asked the Rebbe about whether I should do what I was planning to do, like going to study law, to study at Brooklyn College at night after I finished high school. This was a half a year before. And also I mentioned that I wasn't ready to come into Tamchat Tamimim. I was in Torah Vodaas then, finishing the exams and things. So the Rebbe said, "Dem Jahr was endigt sich in June," he said. This year, ich weiß nicht, wie der Seder ist dort in Hashanah Uberes. He said, I don't know how the Seder is there. And the Rebbe said, "You'll certainly stay in Torah Vodaas." He did not talk about where I'm going to be the following year. But he did say,
I'm not following. The Rebbe said, this Zman is ending
this
in
man,
June.
you're going to certainly remain in Torah Vodaas. Right? That's where you are now.
Right.
That's I was. This is February, Mistama, and the school term goes till June.
Right.
And das was schreibt wegen college, that which we write about college, ob ihr fragt mein Meinung, denk ich, als 1 Jahr sollt ihr sicher reinlegen alle Koiches in Moedi Kodesh, wie schreibt, und efshelach mer euchet. If you ask my opinion, I think that this year you should throw all of your energies into Limudei Kodesh, as you yourself mentioned, one of the options, and maybe more. So, as far as I was concerned, that's what you're doing.
It's very clear.
Yeah, if you ask the Rebbe, many people say, don't ask the Rebbe if you're not prepared to do.
And you mentioned Rabbi Sachs.
Yes.
Rabbi Sachs, I saw a video of him talking about that he asked the Rebbe about being the chief rabbi, and he says that I told my wife before I asked, are you ready to listen to whatever the Rebbe says? Because I'm not going to... He wanted his wife to agree that she's going to listen to whatever the Rebbe says before... So Rabbi Sachs had the chinuch from the Chassidim.
Right. No, that's a known thing with Chassidim.
Mm-hmm.
I've dealt with many people, with hundreds of people over the years. Some are pretty high in their fields, besides Rabbi Sachs. Other people in secular fields. And they had personal medical issues, fertility, different issues. And some of them were in touch with world-class leaders in the field who might have said differently than the Rebbe told them. But I remember one very big professional said, I was brought up, he came from, her grandparents were like Yechidus'n, from Poland, not the parents, not so much. But she said, when you ask a Rebbe, she said, I'd be afraid to go against what he said. It was a fertility question. Yeah. So, in that Yechidus, the Rebbe told me this. Now, the point is here, I did not prepare the ground with my father so much. But, not then and not afterwards, I guess. It was like just, in evasion maybe, or, not, when I think back...
You were a teenager.
Yeah, but, if I had a mashpia, there's, when I look back at all the different things and the bittersweet memories of certain things, I say if I knew then, but today it's from experience and observation. I can't say when I advise people, I'm very often telling them things which I never did or maybe never would have done. But I sincerely believe that that's really what I should have done and what's best for them. That's all, if they're going to listen.
You had things from the Rebbe, you asked the Rebbe different things that you were struggling with in chinuch yourself, right? There were certain things that you asked the Rebbe questions about how to deal with the chinuch of your own children.
That was later on.
Later,
that was many years later. That was 16 years later.
Mm-hmm.
No, here, so the trajectory, the direction was that I was going to, after the summer, going to Gan Yisrael the second year, the first year in Swan Lake. This year I was there when they ever came to camp on the Sunday, Tezvav Tammuz. And after camp, I was going to go back to Torah Vodaas and go in the evening to Brooklyn House like everybody else did. But now the Rebbe said this, I'm going to be in the Beis Medrash. That's going to be there for 1 year. I did not intend or expect to change from Torah Vodaas or to do this more than 1 year. That was my feeling then. Then my father was very upset, etc., etc. And I wrote to the Rebbe, and then I was in camp. After camp, we stayed for a Shabbos to clear up the camp. And and Rabbi Avremel Shem Tov, he was very, very close to us always, our family. Later on, the Rebbe told him, when the Rebbe told him that when he moved up to a higher position directing the camp, the Rebbe said it's not his inyan, it's not his job to maintain contact with individual parents, except for Lou.
Yeah.
He said that family you got to stay with. So he was very close with my parents. But anyway, he told me a very... he spoke with me, went for a walk that Friday night in the dark. And he said, look, you know that sooner or later you're going to go to Lubavitch Yeshiva. It's going to aggravate you. You're going to regret not taking the move earlier. And that sentence was like the Makaba Patish. We say a whole build-up, all different things. So I wrote to the Rebbe, and I wrote that what my father was concerned about, Parnasa issue, and I had a friend called Rabbi Yisrael Rosenfeld, Olav Shalom.
Yeah.
I knew him from Torah Vodaas. At 1 or 2 years he was with me in the 8th grade. Then he was a Lubavitcher, but then he was in camp, and he told me, if you come to Lubavitch, come to Newark. That's where he was studying, and we'll learn together. So I wrote to the Rebbe all about Newark and this plan, and about my father's apprehensions. So the Rebbe wrote the following answer: Newark or Montreal, ka'atzas hararam sheyichye mentlik. You go to Newark or Montreal, which I had not mentioned, I didn't know it existed, according to the advice of Rabbi M. Mentlik. V'hadibur im oviv sheyichye meyused al nusach birchas hazon. Al toichin, maybe toichin, or al nusach birchas hazon. The conversation with your father should be based on the content of the first bracha of benching, hazon, which speaks. And
that the Eibushter is the one that's...
So Rabbi Chadaka, when he gave it over, this was regular, normal practice when Rabbi Chadaka gave over all Tzetlach in those days. And very often he would elaborate. And this was obviously...
It was common then for the answers to come in the form of Tzetlach, not letters? It was common then for the answers to come in the form of Tzetlach as opposed to letters?
Yeah. No, if you were in New York, if you were here, you gave it. There was the desk pad in the America's office, which later was called Maskid. It used to be called the America's office. There was a pile of... It would pile up in the course of the day. And several times in the day, the Rebbe would either buzz in and ask whoever was in the office of the Maskidim to bring the letters in to him. Sometimes the Rebbe himself, when he came in, would walk in and take letters. That's where there was a corner of the desk pad on that, in Rabbi Chadakov's desk. That's where letters to the Rebbe were piled. And and where Rabbi Chadakov, it was obviously that this was what his job was. Part of his job was to elaborate on answers of the Rebbe. It was known for saying "Ulotos first beer," and to add to the answer of the Rebbe. And he wouldn't say a word if it wasn't from the Rebbe. But in my case, it was written miyusad.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to elaborate.
On Teuchen, it said the answer is based on.
Right.
And he said that the Rebbe told him to say that in the first bracha of benching, you say Hazonas ha'olam kuloi betuvai. Hashem gives parnasa to the entire world. That's where the parnasa comes from. And he doesn't have to worry about parnasa. It comes from Hashem, and you're not going to, as you say, you're not going to lose out because you follow Hashem's word. It doesn't mean that you can just sit at home when the time comes to go out and work.
Go to the mikveh at 12.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was Yud Zayin, first Yechidus. The other part of the answer, actually the first part of the answer, but Rabbi Chadok explained the second part first, what you should tell your father. The other part was Newark or Montreal. This was already opening up a whole new thing. Leaving the country, I'd never left.
United States.
I hardly ever went to New Jersey. I was, a Brooklyn boy. That's all. And suddenly, Montreal, a foreign country, is brought up. And the Rebbe said, "Ask Rabbi Mentlik." So I anticipated, grueling, searching. At least 20 minutes for her to see where you're holding, to know, is this yeshiva appropriate or that one? So I was thinking about the Gemara that I had been learning and different things. And I went to Rabbi Mentlik. It was during the Seder in the Zal in 770. And I introduced myself and I told him the Rebbe told me to speak with you. I showed him the answer. Newark or Montreal, Katzas Aram Sheyichya Mentlik. So he said, what did you write to the Rebbe? I said, I had a plan of going to Newark, deliver to Rosenfeld. He said, did you mention Montreal in your zettel? I said, no, I didn't even know about it. He said, Montreal. So the whole interview was maybe 60 seconds. I always think maybe the Rebbe wanted to show me what a Chossid is. Mentlik was a real deep panimi.
As opposed to thinking, the Rebbe told me to figure it out, so let me figure it out. No, he just needed to figure out what the Rebbe really wants.
That's right. So that was. And then I went to Montreal, and that's when I went to the Rebbe Simchas Torah, and I said, I'm asking for a bracha because we'll have matzlacha. It's the things were pretty tense with my father, and I had a whole Yechidus about it. Yud Shvat, early Yud Gimel Shvat. It was 4:00 in the morning in Tavshin Yud Ches, Tavshin Chai, Yud Shvat, Yud Beis of Yud Gimel, and I brought this up. And the Rebbe told me one thing was to go back as quickly as possible to Montreal. Don't get into arguments. And the Rebbe said, if you are success, get the yeshiva in Montreal to write reports from time to time to your father. When he sees your success there, better verstehen, as college is nicht for dir. That's what he told me. Didn't just say 1 year. He said he'll see that college is not for you.
The Rebbe said that.
In that Yechidus, it was a very, very powerful. Every Yechidus is powerful. Every single, whatever it was, even it was so-called...
Because also you were asking the Rebbe questions.
Pardon?
You were asking the Rebbe questions about what to do. I think like other people later that experienced Yechidus, they didn't really ask the Rebbe much. It was more...
Yes, the Rebbe, and also the Rebbe told you sometimes. A lot of them would the Rebbe asked me questions.
Like what?
Pardon?
Like what?
A lot, many. There's a famous one where in Tavshin Lamed Hey on Isru Chag Sukkos. Now the context is it was a Thursday night. There were hundreds of people. Orchim. This was Motzi Simchas Torah, Chavdalad Tishrei. Wednesday was Simchas Torah. Thursday was Yechidus. Friday night Shabbos Bereishis, the most precious Shabbos of the year. And the Rebbe was going to sit there the whole night. I was there with a son. My son Pinny was 5 years old. I took him to the Rebbe for Sukkos. So we went in relatively early. It was probably about 10 o'clock at night. And I just wrote, asking a bracha, that's all, for myself and my family. I didn't I didn't anticipate, and I didn't want to keep the Rebbe. And I didn't have any special thing to ask either. And it turned out to be one of the longest Yechidus. It's the only Yechidus. I was in Yechidus, I think, 29 times. But this was the only Yechidus where the masker opened up the door in the middle. Only time. And the next night was Friday night. Before the Rebbe came down, it was Rabbi Groner. He came, it was a good friend. He said, why do you keep that? I said, I wrote one line on my zettel. I told him a little bit of what the Rebbe said. He said, I thought you're too young for that kind of a thing. But
what did the Rebbe say?
I was 34. No, that's what Label Groner said.
But what did the Rebbe say?
What did the Rebbe say? It was a few things. I'll tell you one thing he told me. He said that my main work then, I was teaching also, but my main work was with student and youth and adult education. Like, as I said, Chabad house and Chabad on campus type of work. So the Rebbe said, when you go on campuses, wirst du treffen mit Studentkes, you will meet female students, was Hiten Gornisht, who keep nothing of Yiddishkeit. Now this is Chavdalet Tishrei. It was exactly a month after Chavdalet Elul when the Rebbe launched the Neshek, Neil's Shabbos Kodesh campaign. And the Rebbe said, they keep nothing, but you speak to them about lighting a candle for Shabbos on the condition that they light it before Shkia, before sunset. And the Rebbe said twice in that little part of the whole Yechidus, they will folgen, they will obey the rule not to do after Shkia, mitzad, nicht mitzad frumkeit, no mitzad ehrlichkeit. Not because, the Rebbe just said, you're talking about people who keep nothing. It won't be because of frumkeit, it'll be because they're honest, they're straight. And that will be a condition you make with them, so they'll do it. He said, tell them if they missed a week, better not to light that week, and to light after Shkia. That was one part of it, and a lot of satellite stories that happened as a result of that sentence of the Rebbe, that Hayrah. Another thing, there were so many things, like, he asked me, did you hear from so-and-so lately? It's a famous Yechidus. About a certain communal figure. Now, I dealt mainly with young people. I spoke to, B'nai B'rith, adult education groups, shul groups, but my main, the work that I had to initiate was going to youth clubs. There were many in those days. Later years, you didn't have it because you had people, had their own games on their devices. But those years, there were thousands of young people in groups on weekday nights. And universities, especially. All the campus, all throughout England, I had regular shiurim weekly in London on Wednesdays for King's College and LSE, London School of Economics. Thursdays in University College London and Hillel House, which was nearby. Monday in Queen Mary College. Tuesdays I used to go to Cambridge one week and Oxford the following week. So that was my traveling. And then the other campuses, I would come either for, to speak for an evening in Bristol, or in Birmingham, or for a Shabbaton, Manchester, in Scotland even, Edinburgh. It was my work with students. And so, what was I holding?
You were talking about the Yechidus.
Yeah, that Yechidus.
You did the work on campus before you went on Shliach also in New York, right?
Yeah. I started here. I'll tell you the truth. My first experience was in the winter of Tovshin Chof, when I was 19 and a half years old. And Rabbi Nissen Mangel Shlita brilliant. Atayam is very, very brilliant and Chassidish Yid. And he was going to downtown Montreal. We were in uptown, whatever it was. We were in Park Avenue, a certain Jewish area, but it was one of these big shuls, and there was what they would call today singles or something. There was people in their 20s mainly. This is 1959, 1960, Tov Shechov. And he asked me to come with him. I was a younger bacha, several years older than me, about 5 years older than me, but he asked me to come with him. And I did. And it was like an hour and a half walk coming back. We probably went by car before Shabbos. And we were there and there were hundreds, about 200 students or young people. And I was fascinated by the questions, how he answered it, how he respected every question. He gave a compliment to every question or elaborated on it. On the way home, we analyzed what had been said and how, ways of answering questions. That was my first experience, I think.
You also went to Penn State. That was later?
Penn State was, but I was in Montreal, Yitches, Chav, Chaf Aleph.
Okay.
Penn State was Shabbos Lech Lecha, Tov Shechav Beis.
You were married already?
No.
Right before?
I was 21 years old.
Oh, okay.
21 and a half. And I was in 770, though, those 2 years. And 6 people went for that Shabbos. Those were Rabbi Avremel Shem Tov, Shlita was one. And
who are
the other, the 6 people?
Now, who organized this thing to go?
It was actually Rabbi Binyamin Klein. Because when he was a bacha, years before then, he was on Merkish Lichus in Texas, and in Waco, Texas, he met a man by the name of Rabbi Goldberg. And interesting person. I found out years later that the Rebbe's mother, the Rebbe's Chana, that Rabbi Goldberg's mother lived in Crown Heights, and that the Rebbe's mother had a room in her house in Lincoln Place in the early, when she first came to America, in Tufshin Yud. At the time of that year, she was there. Anyway, so Rabbi Goldberg then became the Hillel rabbi in Penn State. And Rabbi Klein had maintained, like he was a big Masuda, Rabbi Klein. He maintained even later, years after we were there. He always had contact, and the Rebbe would ask Rabbi Klein, "What do you hear from Rabbi Goldberg?" It was after Yaakov Hanukkah. It was Niskarev. And
you're talking about after the
years
Shabbos.
later, after our Shabbaton, and years later. And he was a Chossid, and he couldn't eat. In Rabbi Goldberg's house, they ate Cholav Stam. And Yaakov Hanukkah couldn't. He was the guy who didn't know olive base 3 years ago, and he couldn't eat in his house, and he was upset.
Mm-hmm. Rabbi Goldberg.
Okay. So the Rebbe asked Binyamin Klein, and when he went in one time, he said, "What's happening with Rabbi Goldberg?" So he said he feels bad that this is his Talmud. Can I eat in his house? So the Rebbe said, "Tell him that that all of Yaakov Hanukkah's Mechayel El Choyel is his credit."
Okay, so now explain why. Because Rabbi Klein knew Rabbi Goldberg, and Rabbi Goldberg
from Waco.
Yes,
he became. He was a contact with Rabbi Goldberg. I'm telling you a little bit about Rabbi Goldberg.
Because that was the Shabbaton, and Hanukkah became from.
And this went on for every few months. The Rebbe would ask him, and he would report to the Rebbe. Then eventually, Yaakov Hanukkah got married, and his wife Bina Aleh Shalom, whose yahrzeit is Chof Ov, by the way. She was very knowledgeable. And she was like a Beis Yaakov graduate type of girl. And Rabbi Goldberg had sons, and there's no schools there. Hours away from anything. And she was the teacher of Rabbi Goldberg's sons. And at that time, he appreciated what the Rebbe said, that it's your benefit, it's your tzchar, your reward. And the Rebbe asked, and Yom Klein told this to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe didn't ask again, how is he doing? Anyway, let's come back. So we went there, Beryl Baumgarten, Olav Shalom, and his one of his proteges, Chaim Swade, Rabbi Yossel Goldstein, Rabbi Benjamin Klein.
Only the men went, or was the...
Only men went.
Yeah.
Rebel Shemtiv, and myself, aus Talangayon, and with those four. And there were about 300 students. People didn't really, today, Orthodox Jews, Haredi Jews, you walk in Manhattan, you see people, and in many various communities, including London, but around the world, there are pockets of hundreds or thousands of Hasidim. People see it. Then it was like a dream. And they had on the lampposts and on the trees, they had like a poster with a Handel Lieberman painting of the Hasidim dancing, and it just said, an experience or a Hasidic experience. Friday night isn't this time. Hundreds of people came.
So it was just a wild phenomenon that they wanted to see.
It was like meet them firsthand. We sang Nigunim with them and we spoke with them. The whole Shabbos, and at the end, and they were very taken. 2 weeks later, Rabbi Goldberg invited. What worked out retrospectively, this was the first Pekisha ever. But it was Milmata Lamaila. Rabbi Goldberg took a group of about 15 students for Shabbos Chayesora, Shabbos Vochem Kislev, to New York for Shabbos, to be by the Rebbe with the needle, be a farbrengen. They came Thursday night. It was arranged, and 3 of the students had Yechidus'n. One girl, Susan, she was in for maybe at least 45 minutes. And then there was Ronnie Kaplan, another student, and Yaakov Chanukah, Jack Hanoka, he was known as. And they were the 2 Bachurim were in for over an hour and a half each. And look, that's a story in itself. All of these Yechidus'n. The Rebbe gave first a general small sikha, a 5-10 minute talk to all of the 15 with the rabbi, and he spoke about Shabbos Vochem Kislev, and the Rebbe dwelled on 2 nekudas, and he spoke in English. One was that a lot of people have a mistaken notion of what Shabbos is. They see it as they define it by what is forbidden. And that's not really what it's about. That is a part of it, but that's the byproduct. It's what it is. It's the kedusha, the spirituality that you gain on Shabbos. And the second was the fact that it's not any Shabbos, Shabbos Vochem Kislev, which the essence is Chanukah and Moisef Ohelach, the idea of increasing in holiness. Those were the 2 nekudas of this sikha.
Okay, so you were discussing this long Yechidus'n that you had.
Now, so what I was saying is that my work at that time was with young people, with students. You asked me how it started,
I feel like I feel like we need a week over here till all the information comes out.
I'm happy to share the information. It's, I always think, whenever you make a cheshbon on nefesh, Reb Mendel Futterfast, I heard from him countless times. He lived in London for years. Is the cheshbon is supposed to be not what I achieved. You have to see what I did, but it has to be focused on what I could have done more than that. Mm-hmm. And that should be a story. That part I never really excelled in. How can I? What did I miss? I'll tell you stories. I tell you the stories I tell are 1% or less of what happened. The people you met and it worked and this happened, that happened. But then there's all those times that you just blew it, or you just sat and read a book on the plane, or you slept, or whatever it was. So I tell these stories. I hope it'll help someone else to be able to do the same thing, but better.
But it makes people feel guilty that there's always things. Is that a good thing? People should feel guilty.
Guilt is not a good feeling. It's
So what is it?
People should feel inspired. People should feel empowered. People should feel, the only thing that matters is now. The 20-year-old and the 80-year-old, each of them is making a mistake in their general attitude to life. And ironically, they're both making the exact same mistake. The 20-year-old is saying, I'm young, I got all my options open. Please God, I got energy, I'll have health, I'll have this, I'll have that, and I'm going to be able to do this, I have so many choices, wow, spoiled for choices. The 80-year-old is living with nostalgia, good things, regret, anxiety, what's next, aches and pains, whatever it is, whatever they live with. They're both making the same mistake. They took the eye off the ball, which is now, today. Today is a lifetime. You can achieve something today which will last forever, whether you're 20, whether you're 90. Doesn't make a difference. It's using that day. And that's all that exists. Remember, Futterweiss is to sing in Yiddish. Es ist nicht da kein Nacht, es ist nicht da kein Morgens, mehr da ein bisschen heim, was darf man sagen? There's no yesterday, there's no tomorrow, there's just a little bit today, so what do you have to worry? But he said, it's today. You remember, you have something you can do. So it's not a guilt. Whenever I tell the stories of things that happened, which were successful, those are the ones I'm going to tell.
Right.
So I say to myself...
We'll do another podcast. With the failures, we'll do another one.
Yeah, you can learn from them too. But my point is that because you don't want people to see you as such a great guy, because it's false pretenses. So that because of that great anivus, just because you are a modest guy and you don't want to have false pretenses, you should deprive them of something because of that. That's certainly not on the cards. The many letters from the Rebbe, people wrote to the Rebbe, why do you expect me? The most important thing he expected of us was to share with others. It's not about your Gan Eden, it's about what the Eibishter wants in the world. It's about Dira B'Tachtonim, and that means it's somebody else helping them. And many, many letters of the Rebbe in Hebrew and in English, where people wrote feeling that they are not really worthy and not really doing what they should be doing in their own life. And so how can they justifiably speak to someone else? They're hypocrites. And almost every time the Rebbe says 2 points. Number one, was it jener schuldig? Why should that person suffer because you didn't live up to your potential? You're missing something. It's your avodah, but you're stealing from the other person because of you're adding something. Secondly, by sharing it with someone else, you'll inspire yourself as well. That's the way you'll be able to go some way towards correcting the mistakes you made, omission or commission.
Okay, fine. So let's go back to learning from the stories. So
the Rebbe told me that Yechidus, that long Yechidus, it was probably 15 minutes. But on that night, anything more than a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I had Yechidus'n of 2 minutes, but you could write there was something to learn from it. Things that the Rebbe said, a one-liner at the end, the bracha. Somebody, went in like for an occasion, a birthday, but it went right, it penetrated straight to where you were and what you needed. The night before the bris of our oldest son, the visits from England, well, those usually are connected with other things. Anyway, so let's come back there. The Rebbe said, have you heard anything? Didn't say do you meet. Have you heard anything lately from, we'll call him Mr. X, a communal dealer? I was dealing with students mostly. Adult educator, I knew him, and he probably knew me, but it wasn't my normal field of work. But it happened to be that I met Rabbi Bernhard, Alav Shalom, Rabbi Nachman Bernhard from South Africa. It was before he was a Chabadnik himself, but he was very, very much the Rebbe's person. He saw the Rebbe as the leader, as the Moshe Rabbeinu of their generation. And I knew him well from South Africa, from my visits there. I was there twice by then.
Before you were in England?
No, when I was in England, I was sent in Chav Ches 3 years later, and in Lamed Aleph.
There's no Shliach there then?
No, that's a whole story in itself, because they asked me to come there as the Shliach. And South Africa is a different, I have a very special closeness with South Africa and with Rabbi Lipsker and the whole Kapal Bacha, Olav Shalom, Salangiya. Yeah, very, very...
Okay, so...
But let's come back to here.
Yeah.
So, the Rebbe said, have you heard from him? I said, I met Rabbi Bernhard. He told me that he met him for breakfast. He was in England, that's some official person, and that this person was, I said it in Yiddish, he strongly criticized the Rebbe about Mihu Yehudi. Actually, it was very much strong. What Rabbi Bernhard told me was that the man was so vehement in his criticism of the Rebbe that he saw there's no point to even try to convince him that he's wrong. And so what he did was, he made him he said, I don't agree with you at all, and let's change the subject. He just didn't discuss it. That's what he told me. I think I told that to the Rebbe as well. So the Rebbe said to me, do you know why he said that? Which is, if Rebbe to come to me, I was 30.
This person was a person of influence?
He was.
Yeah, okay.
And he was a person who had made a statement. I'll tell you a little background, which was not directly said. He had made a statement or written an article in somewhere that Mi Yehudi is not such a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's a diversion of energy or whatever. He belittled it. And the Rebbe in a Sikha probably said something which was not, but that's what the Rebbe said to me. Do you know why he said that? It's because somebody had an ongeret of mir a lashon hara to God a motzi shemra. Somebody told him about me, about the Rebbe, a lashon hara, or maybe even a motzi shemra. The difference between lashon hara and motzi shemra is lashon hara is a negative aspect of a person, which is true. You're still not allowed to say it just because it's true. That's what the Avera is. Motzi Shemra is slander. It's a lie. It's not even true. So the Rebbe said, he said something which is Lashon Hara, maybe even Motzi Shemra. And namely, that I attacked him in public. As ich habe von ihm geredet. And that's why he's seething inside of him. And then the Rebbe said a sentence, Ich red nicht wegen Menschen, ich red wegen Shittas. I don't speak about people, I speak about ideas. In other words, if the Rebbe said something which didn't agree with him, the Rebbe is not going to compromise his idea, obviously. But the Rebbe is not, it's never a personal attack. It's never about the person. He never said, somebody said, and therefore. The Rebbe spoke about something which contradicted what he said, and then somebody told him, and as the Rebbe is saying it, I'm standing like a soldier at Yechidus'n by the Rebbe, and I'm listening to this, and in the next split second in my mind, I had an insight, an inspiration. I said, this man who's talking now is the greatest leader, the greatest tzaddik, the greatest Baal Ruach HaKodesh, the greatest teacher, the greatest mechanech, the greatest asken, the greatest builder of moisters, the greatest publisher of works of previous generations. Well, one of the greatest of the whole 20th century. But look, think of this farm that Rebbe gave out. Besides those that he inspired people to give out. And you know, this all in a split second. But at the end of the day, he is your personal best friend. And that you can say about everybody in the world. Anyone comes to the Rebbe is, to him, totally, his whole essence is given over to that person. And therefore, this is all in a split second. When you get back to London, you're going to get a meeting with Mr. X by hook or by crook.
You're thinking this.
I'm thinking this in it's a second all. The whole thing was in a second. And as I'm thinking it, the Rebbe says, it's not a good idea for you to go to him and tell him that I said this. And as I'm thinking that, I must admit I was like a bit of a wise guy. In my own mind, I said to myself, I'll ask Rabbi Vogel, Alav Shalom. Rabbi Vogel was very close with this person. And I'll speak with him, and I'll tell him he should go and set this man straight, you know, whatever. And as I'm thinking that, a second later, the Rebbe says, it's not a good idea if you ask a fellow Lubavitcher to go to him. And the Rebbe said, if the man came to me personally, I could straighten him out. The Rebbe said himself. I could explain it to him. It's not to you, it's not for someone else of a nash. Why? The Rebbe said there were 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. Mihu Yehudi, who is a Jew, is one of them. If this person does not want to cooperate with Chabad on Mi Yehudi, let's work with him on the other 612. And I consider that, to this day, as a one-line lesson, direction, and directive in life, in everything. In chinuch, in parenting, in marriage, in business, in just socializing. You have a choice of seeing a person. You don't have to compromise your values, but you see where you agree with the other person and work together to build something with that joint agreement.
This is the premise that we learned from the Rebbe on how we're makarev and how we every single yid, because this is the premise. They're doing mitzvahs that they can, or they're not doing that one mitzvah that they can't.
Yeah. And the Rebbe said it explicitly. Rabbi Tzvi Greenwald, Malav Shalom, he was a machanech. When Chabad first came there, Chabad, in the late Tavshin Yuds and the Yuds especially, they went to all the kibbutzim. The people in the kibbutzim were from Russia. A lot of them. They came from similar milieu, similar society, and but they had, jettisoned a lot. And he was going to speak about Ahavas Yisrael and what unites us and sing Nigunim and, be Makar of them. And the many of the other Hasidim would criticize him.
Lubavitcher Chassidim.
Yeah, the Kfar Chabad people, they were Russian. He said, you're being too soft and too pussyfooting with them. Tell them like it is. Tell them, just tell them off. And he felt that that's not going to be an effective way. But he heard it so much that next time he was in Yechidus'n, he mentioned it to the Rebbe. My daughter is married to his grandson. At that time, he told me this story. He said, at the time of the Chasana, he said that the Rebbe said to him, if you tell them that, in Yiddish, if you tell them that, you're going to create a barrier, a wall, machen a Wand, a mechitza, between you and them. He said, you go and you build on the good. That's the only way to work with a person. Chas v'sholom doesn't mean compromising your values or not saying, here's what I hold. But you're not out there to criticize. You're there to get the person, l'shitoscha, where you are holding, there's something you can do.
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Yechidus'n Derher. We live in a chaotic world. A world where for us Chassidim is a seinu, Lei Ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Yechidus'n Derher provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's their hair books, their hair online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular their hair, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's bachrim in yeshivas, receiving the deher, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying their hair club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Hair Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Derher is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Derher through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
So let's go back to, I think, in the chronological place where we were holding. You're in Montreal. Then you came over to 770. So how did you come over to 770?
Actually, that's a very, very important question. I didn't know how I could ever get it to happen.
You were stuck in Montreal.
Yeah, exactly. And I loved the Rebbe. Everyone does, but I loved being in the Rebbe's presence. I loved being by the Rebbe. It was less, davening, but whatever it was. I can think, even when I was here already, or before when I came in just for a while, the farbrengen was like in Gan Eden. You see, you can get a taste of it from the videos today if a person really wants and you focus on it. If it means something to you, allow it to happen instead of people today. Some people analyze themselves. Am I feeling it enough? Just get into the whole thing. But then
Your
was
son,
there.
your son
Yossi.
Yossi on the podcast was discussing this. That through a video you can feel it.
Yeah, but Yossi himself gave a talk somewhere abroad about Yud Shvat Tavshin Lamed.
Yes, he spoke about this in the podcast. How he
And then somebody told him, what are you telling us? We didn't see it. He says, I was 6 years old then.
yeah.
Yeah. He did a lot of, when the things that he made in his articles.
Yeah.
First I said, can I know a brilliant memory?
And he's putting it into a book. He said, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that when you're in Montreal, you wanted to be with the Rebbe. So you're saying every time you're by the Rebbe.
In Montreal, you are entitled, so-called, to go in. The whole yeshiva used to go in with a bus, or we hired a train carriage, a car of the train, 4 times a year. Yud Shvat and Pesach and Yud Beis Tammuz and Tishrei. Those are the 4 times you went in. Besides that, you need a special permission to come. Even those times, you were not allowed to go unless you had a special paper, a reshus signed by the Hanhola, and you had to be, in order to get that paper, A, you had to be fahed in Nigla and Chassidus, and B, while you were here in New York, you had to be fahed in Nigla and Chassidus. I remember, because I was the 4 years there, Rabbi Yoel with fahed in Chassidus, and Rabbi Mentlik in Nigla. And if a bacher came, and he asked, Rabbi Chadakov, can I go into Yechidus'n or something? He said, wo ist dein passport? Where's your passport? I have somewhere like a blank, of that form. There was a form of that. I didn't know how, I had in my mind, the Rebbe was concerned. I don't know, because I had, I wasn't writing to the Rebbe, but there was tensions, probably. I wasn't in New York that much. My mother, Allah Hashem, wrote every week. And every couple of months or so, my father would write a couple of lines. Shalom Abracha, yeah. He would write,
Mm-hmm.
One of my biggest regrets in life, I could have handled him.
Definitely.
Like it would have been the smoothest thing in the world. Yeah, but you need a little bit seichel and a little bit of experience. Anyway, by the way, he was a man of incredible integrity. He was moiser nefesh for Shabbos, mamish, in a way that, people wouldn't know. There's stories about him at the university when he didn't take exams. They took on Shabbos, and people denounced him to the people who had to give him his qualification.
Right.
And he stood his ground. But now, when we were getting married, which is now just almost to the day, 62 years ago, which was Tezvav Tammuz.
You're talking about how you got the 770 first.
I'll tell you about my father, and then we'll come, and then you'll understand
Okay.
why I thought. I thought it's because of my relationship with my father, the Rebbe felt that not being the whole time together,
Right.
because he did tell me, Yud Shvat Tavshin Chai, leave as soon as you can. By the way, I told the Rebbe, I'll come back to that, about I wanted to get my father to go into Yechidus'n. And the Rebbe said, he explained to me, the Rebbe spoke to me, even though I was already in Tom Chetmimim, he was calling me Du, but he was explaining things to me. It's 4 o'clock in the morning to a boy who's under 18 years of age. He said, when you ask someone to go visit someone privately, it's not usually the done thing. He says, tell them to come to farbrengen. Und wird sehen, Jeden sitzen dort mit Bed, on bed, he'll see Jews sitting there with beards, without beards, and he'll hear a little bit of what's spoken. That will have some effect. And the Rebbe suggested that I should get, he said, the Rebbe says it's too early to do it now, but for Purim, this was Yud Shvat, so 6 weeks later is going to be Purim Tovshin Chai, in advance. The Rebbe said, get him to come. He said, the Rebbe asked me who is close with him. Who does he know here? And the Rebbe asked if he knew Akos Weiss. I said, the person he knows the best is Avremel Shem Tov. So the Rebbe told me, ask Avremel to arrange, the first thing the Rebbe said was arrange a lift, a ride. My father never drove. I don't know if the Rebbe knew this, but he said arrange a lift for him to come to that farbrengen, and he'll be there and he'll hear a little bit we speak. That's going to have an effect. And Rabbi Shem Tov, Shalita, arranged with Yankel Winter. He went to my father, which was, my father liked him very much. He talked with him in Russian. He liked the whole idea of him from the camps. He was in the summer camp. In Gan Yisrael, right. 2 of my brothers had the bar mitzvahs in camp. So my father had been there. And when Avremel said, would you like to come to the Purim farbrengen? So the first thing my father said was, kareta? Will you send me, it's a Russian word. He knew he could speak to him, a coach. Kareta. And the first thing the Rebbe said was, get him a lift. Get someone to take him. The first thing my father said to Avremel was,
are you going to send me a...
And then he came to the farbrengen. He was there for maybe an hour. Avremel told him, I think if you listen on the tape, you can hear Avremel telling the Rebbe, Mr. Lew is here. And then Achron Shel Pesach, which is another 6 weeks after. It's 10 weeks after a kid of 18 years old was in Yechidus'n. Achron Shel Pesach, I went over for Kosher Bracha, about one of the last people, maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And the Rebbe asked me, did your father tell over anything from Purim? I said, one Besser. Anyway. So the Rebbe kept the count of it. Later, when we were getting married, 5 years later, in Tovshin Chav Gimel, on Tezvav Tammuz, and the Rebbe was going to officiate beside the Yechidus'n. So my father...
That's a whole nother story in itself.
Yeah. But my father had... Part of that story is my father... the Masada Yechidus'n of his son's wedding. He has to go see him. So he went into Yechidus'n with my mother on Hey Tammuz, Thursday night.
So he didn't go in as part of the Yechidus'n officially. His pretext for going to the Rebbe is because the Rebbe is in the Masada Yechidus'n.
But by that time he'd been to that farbrengen. He had been to the farbrengen of Pashas Vayetze Tovshin Chav Beis, Moshe Fellow's Reifruf, and he was at Yitzes Kislev Chav Beis as well. We had Sheva Brachas for the fellas. So by that time it was like smooth running. It was not near. Right. So I did something I never did before or after, which is when my parents were going into Yechidus'n that night, Hey Tammuz, I walked in and I introduced them.
It wasn't the Yechidus'n of Chassan Kala.
I went in with my Kala separately that night.
Okay.
That was a separate Yechidus'n. But when my parents came, it might have been before I came, I don't remember if it was before or after I went with my Kala. But we opened the door, I opened the door, and I walked in and I said, "Das ist mein Tata und Mama. This is my father and mother, or this is meine Eltern, these are my parents." And I withdrew and closed the door. But as soon as I said this, the Rebbe stood up and walked around the table and gave him a Shalom Aleichem. So my father said to the Rebbe in Yiddish, I don't think that I deserve this recognition. It's covered because when my son was in your yeshiva, the first 3 years, I was not happy about it. So my father was like a very straight person. So the Rebbe said, "Was sagt ihr heint? What do you say today?" He said, "Heint bin ich zufrieden. Today I'm happy." So the Rebbe said, "Lama reden wegen heint. Let's talk about today." That's what comes there. So now, how did I get to go to 770? In Tov Shin Chof Aleph, after having been 4 years in Montreal, 4 beautiful, beautiful years, which I, in their own way, but I wanted to be in 770. And I didn't write in it settle. I spoke with Rabbi Chadokov, asked him to present to the Rebbe that my brothers were going to Camp Gan Yisrael, and I think I can have a positive effect on them if I'm in the camp. And so he asked the Rebbe said, if you feel you can have it, then go to the camp. At the end of camp, the end of the summer, I told Rabbi Chadokov that if I learn in 770, I will be able to have a career, learn with my brother who was going to college, I think. I don't remember exactly when, if it was. He was going to the evening college. And I didn't write this. I asked orally through Rabbi Chadokov. And the Rebbe answered, if your brother will be to learn with you, stay in 770. So that's how I Chav Beis. I was in 770. I got engaged at the end of Chav Beis. That's a story in itself. And then I was a full year till our Chasana. So I was Chav Beis, Chav Gimel in 770. And then I was in Koilel, Chav Dalet, Chav Hei. So that's 4 special years. I mean, it was, all the years, all the visits, the Tishreis and the Yitzhak, whatever it was, these were powerful moments. I remember after a Shabbos farbrengen, with the hot summer days, and you walk out and going home, and whether it was in Yeshiva or in Koilel, and Crown Heights was majority of, modern Orthodox or Aguda style. People were walking, going for Spazier Shabbos afternoon. You're going home, it's 5 o'clock, you're just going home for Suda Shabbos. And I used to say, how can, there was such a light, such a powerful gilui taking place. And how could a person just be next door, in a manner of speaking, and not to go in? Years later, when I went to Russia, and I met the guy, I met people who were from Lubavitch, but from Litvish kind of. I've realized there was a community there. There was a non-religious, which is known, but there was also like religious. Like a man told me, Bertel Torbichto, what's his name? I met him in Moscow, and Reb Getcher, the old Chossid, used to call him a Misnagid. Uh-huh. So one private moment while we were there over Rosh Hashanah, Tavshin Mem Beis, so I said to him, "How are you? Where are you from?" He said, "I was born in Lubavitch." So I said, "Why did they call you a Misnagid?" He said, "Ich hab gelernt nicht in der Chassidische Cheder." He said, "I went to the non-Chassidic school." So there was another,
This existed before.
I didn't. Even I was thinking when I was in Crown Heights, to our feeling, the whole universe was there. The Rebbe was changing the world. Every word that the Rebbe was saying, every farbrengen, was an experience. Things happening. And I say it's accessible to people today as well. And the people who experienced it also, you can have withdrawal symptoms, or you can just sometimes it just it gets in the back of your memory. But it was something, and it was something effective in Gashmias and Ruchnias in the world. It changed things. If you allow it, if you surrender oneself to hearing what the Rebbe is saying, then one thing you're going to be doing, you're going to access your own inner self, and B, you'll be doing more of what you should be doing than you otherwise would.
So I heard someone mention that Ben Shem Tov wrote a letter to your mother-in-law that he never saw the Rebbe be misasik in a shidduch as much as he was with yours. You agree with that statement?
I don't know what happened with other shidduchim, and I'll tell you something. That that letter he wrote in his own handwriting.
In English.
He writes. I have it. I sent it to all our kids. You know, I've kept it all the years. It was to my father-in-law and mother-in-law.
Zalman
Zalman and Rosalind. He said, "Dear Zalman," and he said, "I want to speak from my heart." And that's what I'm writing in English. He wanted to speak to them.
He spoke English, Bencha.
Well, you see, he wrote there. It's very. That's one time I had to go. I was invited to speak to the Sheikh Chabad in Israel. It's about 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer, there's no school anyway then. And I asked through the mosque. I asked orally again. I asked the Rebbe, should I accept the invitation? And the answer was, if you can speak Hebrew in a way they should understand it, accept it. It didn't work out then, but now I've been to Israel many, many times, or in Zoom over the last few years, giving farbrengens or talks. I always think of that answer. The Rebbe didn't say if you are grammatically correct or if you have nice words or poetic. He said if they will understand. In other words, the main object of a farbrengen is the teuchen. It's what you're saying. Will they understand what you're saying? That was the question.
Mm-hmm.
And Rabbi Ben Shem Tov wrote, you can clearly understand his English. You clearly understand it. And what he wrote was, in my 43 years in Lubavitch, I never saw one of the Rabbeim push a shidduch. I think the word he used was push a shidduch. Like this one. Now, he also told me, Ben Shem Tov.
You knew him from here, from New York.
But
you knew him here in New York.
Benzi, I knew his sons. He was a known figure,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, but he told me that he met the Rebbe Chana, the Rebbe's mother, in the street the day after Ashidduch. Ashidduch was on a Wednesday. We met on Motzei Shabbos the first time. I was the assistant head counselor in Gan Yisrael. I went back to Swan Lake.
That was the first interaction you had with the Rebbe's mother? After the Shidduch?
I?
Yeah.
No, I mean, everyone knows she used to come to farbrengen. She came to davening. I don't remember when the actual first time. It could be when I came back from England, when I had a direct. But I was with her dozens of times.
Mm-hmm.
I met her in the street. She would stop and say something very relevant. Or she would sit in the front of 1418 President, where she lived, like in the summer when it's very warm. And if you went by, she'd say, no, she'd ask you something about your wife, how's this, how's that, whatever. But she met Rabbi Ben Shem Tov, and he said that she told him, "Mat mir gesagt, dass ihr seid geworden a ganze Shatchen." They told me that you have become a whole Shatchen. That was the day after our Shidduch, I think, which was Tezayin Tammuz. It was 1 year minus a day before our wedding. Yeah, so that was...
So the bench made the Shidduch? The Rebbe did it?
There were different factors. The first factor was... people were suggesting shidduchim, at that time, and I was in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need anything. This was Gan Eden for me. Not just being by the Rebbe every day and farbrengen. But anytime any shidduch came, they usually came to my parents, to my mother, Allah Shalom, and she would speak to my sisters, to Yaakov, whoever, who would know. Whatever. Didn't come to me. This one, Rabbi Lema Minkowitz, whose birthday was yesterday, he was the chavrusa of Rabbi Avram Jaffe, my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, only brother surviving. And he went for a walk with me on Lag Boima and suggested the idea. What happened was his chavrusa had been home for Pesach, and he said to Lema, just as a chavrusa, just asking for advice, he says, I was home for Pesach, and my sister is a very Chassidish person. And it was England in those days. There was no, the Bederech HaTeva, he says she needs a complete, total Lubavitch person that could be acceptable to my parents or whatever. And so Lema mentioned my name. He had been with me on a pa'ula in Long Island, a wedding in Long Island, and there was a woman that challenged us about being from or about beliefs and stuff. I don't remember what it was even. A middle-aged woman, probably. A Yiddish woman, like a certain type. And I answered her. But at the end she said, what makes you so sure of yourself? And Elema was very impressed with her saying that.
Right.
So he told this to Avram. And then he went for a walk with me. It was like Boima that year, Tavshin Chav Beis. And he told me about this girl. Would you consider it? As I said, look, whatever comes up, I would give it to my mother. I said, but the kind of Yiddish din, that's the first thing I said. So she know. I said, what, where, that was the beginning of it. So that was in the background. Officially, Shliach went through David Raskin in those days. So he's the one that I spoke to directly. But Bentzi Shem Tov he was orchestrating the whole thing. And and my in-laws were not that happy. My wife was only 18 years old when we met. When we married, a year later, she was 19. So
those days it was common to have long.
Pardon?
Those days it was common to have long engagements.
No, not the Rebbe was always against long engagements.
So why do you have a long engagement?
The Rebbe said, "Wait till there's something." That's a whole story. That is a whole story with letters from the Rebbe when they wrote. My father-in-law. We'll come back to that. Why was such a long engagement? But I could also explain it in terms of the norm at that time. Don't forget, she was 18 years old. She was a teenage bride. Even waiting a year, she was only 19. Anyway, my in-laws, even though they were looking for a shidduch for her, what was available in Manchester, I would be a frum person. They were frum people, but there was no question. There was no Lubavitch Bachrim in Manchester that I know of. So they were a little bit worried about it. Betsy Shemta spoke with them. My wife, meanwhile, went to the Detroit camp where the fellas were. My sister actually was there. And she was coming back about 5 days, 6 days. She was coming back for Shabbos, and they were traveling back to England on Wednesday on a flight. So my in-laws, my mother-in-law especially, was holding things back. So she said, okay, you can meet on Motzei Shabbos. It's 3 days before they're traveling. So the worst times you meet someone, if you're interested, they'll come to England in the winter or something. They write to each other, that type of arrangement, months and writing and meeting. Nowadays you say Zoom or WhatsApp. So we met, and they were staying by Mendel Shem Tov, alav shalom. That was their place where they used to stay on Lefferts Avenue.
You wrote to the Rebbe about meeting her?
Obviously. What? No, I wrote to the... I was in camp. I was assistant at house. I wrote to the Rebbe. I asked Rabbi David Braskin, should I take an interest in Shidduchim? And the Rebbe made an arrow with the Ve'im was crossed out and meant L'hisanyein, and whether that particular person was arranged we'll meet Motzi Shabbos. So I came in for Shabbos. It was Yubei Tammuz, and I came in just before Shabbos. I was in camp the whole time. And Motzi Shabbos, it was arranged that we're going to meet at 10 o'clock at night. It's the middle of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Tammuz. We're going to meet at Albany and President at 10 p.m. And my brother-in-law is going to take us to the Staten Island ferry. And I had nothing. I was Shabbosdik. So he gave me his watch and a $10 bill for expenses. And he dropped us off by the ferry. And we went, we talked, whatever, and we took the ferry back and then took a taxi for that $10 in those days. It was worth like $100 today probably. And got back about 1 a.m. to the house, to Mendel Shem Tov's house. And my mother-in-law says, that's Chassidim, come back 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever. But that was the first meeting. Sunday was the Rebbe's the big farbrengen, the weekday farbrengen for Yubei Tammuz. And the Rebbe said the Sikha then about a Chossid is a lamtenshik. The whole story with the Rebbe Rashab and the interpretation, fascinating, beautiful. It tells you what Chassidus is about also.
Mm-hmm.
And Monday, it was arranged. I'm going back to camp. As I said, I was assistant head counselor. I did things there. But we're going to meet. We'll meet for... 1 minute.
Your assistant...
No, Sunday we didn't meet. My Kala and I, because it was the Rebbe's farbrengen. Monday, before I go to the bus to Port Authority to go back to Gan Yisrael, we'll meet for half hour at Mendel Shem Tov's house. Which we did. And then I went back to camp. And on Tuesday, I get a phone call. I don't remember from whom, that I have to come in very urgently. What happened was, on Monday, the Rebbe said that he wanted to meet my in-laws. My mother-in-law was not well, but my father-in-law went into Yechidus'n. And Shver went in, and the Rebbe said, I was thinking about 2 possible dates. Either Kislev or June.
For a chasana.
No, my Shver said for engagement. The Rebbe said, no, a chasana. So he said, we don't even know him. We just met 48 hours before. He said, what's he going to do for a living? He asked the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, Evazan alam tanshik. It was the day after that sikha.
Lamplighter.
He'll be a lamplighter, yeah. So, and then he asked, he said, I don't know him, as this, that, the other, like that. It was like a major shock. So they gave a message to someone that they wanted to meet me. So the next day, Tuesday, I came back in
you have no idea what's going on.
Who?
You don't know what the Rebbe said.
I don't have an idea now even. 63 years later. I was in camp. They told me you get engaged, you marry, get married. Anyway, so I look. You had people did a lot of homework, even in Torah Vodaas. So I came in together with Yitzchak Sofrin. We were actually born the same day. He was also coming in for a shidduch. So we compared notes. And Tuesday, the Rebbe was at the oil. And so we waited till after Maidav. And then my shver was there also, davening with the Rebbe's minyan, Ma'ariv. And then we walked to Lefferts Avenue to meet. Because the next day, Wednesday, the plane was going back. It was a chartered flight, which my father-in-law was the one who actually arranged it. So the next day, it was going back. So it had to be done that night to meet. So we walked back, and I said, look, nice meeting you. Whatever's going to happen in the end, we're all nice people. And I spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes at Mendel Shemtiv's house upstairs there with, meeting them and saying hello. And I don't even remember anything that was said. And they said, go for a walk together. You can imagine a boy and a girl in the middle of Crown Heights. And we walked for about maybe, a total of maybe a half hour. But we walked down Schenectady or Troy and went into Carroll. There's one person that we bumped into. It was a boy, about 12 years old, Moshe Kotlarski. And he was a chaver of mine from the day I ever met him. He was I met him in Camp Gundy as well when he was about 7 years old. And I said, who is this kid? I asked the people there. I didn't know him, anything about him. Because he was there in the office, and he was in the youngest bunk, I think, or so a young 7-8-year-old kid, and he's telling them how they should be doing whatever they're running, how they should run it differently. And you could see that he, somebody with Havana. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so and then I went back to Wednesday morning. Rabbi Chadakov called me in, and he said the Rebbe said that you have to finish it today. Their plan was, now you've met 2-3 times, mm-hmm. you know each other a little bit, but that's not and it's over 3 days. So what you're going to do is you write to each other, and then maybe come to England in November, December, and you get engaged if everything's going good. And then you talk about a wedding, more like a more conventional type of thing. And Rabbi Chadakov called me in, and he says, the Rebbe says you got to finish it today. One way or the other. This is it. So I said 4 words. I said, it's something that depends on others, not just my decision. So he said, the Seder of a Shidduch is that a couple meets, and if they see that there's something there, they meet each other's parents. And if they agree as well, you write to the Rebbe for a bracha. So in other words, you've met, you see if you're willing and she's willing. This all had to be done within an hour or two. And then you ask the Rebbe for a bracha. So I went to Mendel Shemtiv's house, and I spoke to my soon-to-be Kala, who I never called by name anyway, because Avram took us to the Staten Island ferry, but he introduced us. He says, this is my sister, and this is Mindy's brother. That's how we were introduced, with no names. So, anyway, And so we talked and decided to spend the rest of your life together. And we asked the Rebbe. I told her what, to say, what do you think, and this, that, the other. And we had already spoken about main things, about chinuch, different ideas. Besides, many other things. Camp, she was very active in camp in England over those couple of days. And then the parents met. My father, Olav Shalom, was in a business meeting. He couldn't even come that afternoon. He came later on. He was there at Ma'ariv by the Rebbe. But I think my grandmother came and we met in the Milchige restaurant. The parents.
On Kingston Avenue.
Kingston Avenue, which is now the drugstore. It was owned by Herschel Spritzer.
Mm-hmm.
When he asked the Rebbe he should buy it, the Rebbe asked him, is it suitable for a vort or a bar mitzvah? And he said yes. Now, in the whole history of that restaurant, the nearest thing to a vort was that, and the nearest thing to a mitzvah was his own son's bar mitzvah was there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we met there. I think my uncle came with my mother instead of my father, and my mother's brother. Oh yeah, 1 second. So Rabbi Chadakov told me the Seder will be, she's going to go into Yechidus, because there was Yechidus in the afternoon in those days for the guests from England, just before they take the buses back to the airport to go back. A minute, gesegen in sich. A minute Yechidus, 2 minutes. So Rabbi Chadakov said she'll be able to go in with the guests from England, and you write a zettel. Und ich will es reinbringen ben Gavre le Gavre. And I'll take it in between 2 Yechidus'n. I said, maybe I can go in. He says, no, you're not a visitor from England. That's Yechidus for visitors from England. So I had to give it in, but I got the milah of getting an answer b'ksav.
Right.
With the Rebbe, and I write it anytime there's any Lubavitch engagement, and I have time to write it. I write, Yehei b'shotevu muslachas lebinyan adayat bayis chasudusi u'mu'usha bakoil. Those were the words. And she went in, and it was the first time in her life that she was in Yechidus alone. She always went in only with her parents. She was 18 then. And she went in, she told me she said that she told the Rebbe, I made up my mind. She didn't say what. And the Rebbe said he's a very good bacher, this, that, whatever. Told her good things. And Benzi Shem Tov was in Gan Eden HaTachten, anticipating everything. He pulled out of his pocket a bottle of mashke. And he pulled out of another pocket small keleshkis, little shot glasses. And he was giving l'chaim to people around there. Somebody came in, a Chossid. Bell Baumgarten came. He said, what's going on here? And they says, it was just an engagement. Then we went to the airport. And so I had a little conversation off there while they were waiting for the plane. Then we came back. I think it was all the coaches. We came back to 770 that night. When the coach was going away, the Rebbe was smiling very, very powerfully. And my mother-in-law, Allah Shalom, Mrs. Jaffe, Mrs. Rosalind Jaffe, told my mother, Allah Shalom, in England we don't do it like this. It's not even been in the Jewish Chronicle. Did you announce it in the paper? Yeah. It's not even been in the Jewish Chronicle. It didn't give her a ring. That's what she said. So my mother said, I got news for you. We don't do it like that in New York either. He said, this is exceptional. And that night, my father came, but he came a bit later. He wasn't there when we met. And at Ma'ariv that night, when the Rebbe came in, he gave a very big mamash, his whole face was illuminated, smiled to my father. So that was the shidduch.
So why was it a year?
And now, why was it a year? My father-in-law said to the Rebbe that, asking the Rebbe, when should the wedding take place? If the Rebbe will be Misad Yechidus'n, we'll wait till next summer when the planes come into America. And if not, we'll make it in England in the winter. So, on that, there was a correspondence with several letters, some sharp, a little bit sharp.
Didn't the Rebbe stop being Misad Yechidus'n?
Yeah, he already stopped at Yud Shvat Tov Shin Chof, basically. There were maybe 4 exceptions, I think.
So, but your father-in-law knew that.
Pardon?
Your father-in-law knew that there's going to be an exception. Or yeah.
Yeah, but that year itself in Chav Beis there was an exception. Rabbi Avraham Sasonkin, all of a shalom. It was an exception. But, what happened was, the Rebbe said, when he wrote to the Rebbe, should it be in the winter in England, with the Rebbe not being Misad Yechidus'n, or in the summer in New York, the Rebbe being Misad Yechidus'n? So the Rebbe said the time and place of a wedding is decided by the Mechutonim. And in this case, I don't see what's the rush. Since Mrs. Daffy feels that she's young, and the chassan, it'll give the chassan time to complete his studies, better to wait till the summer. So that would look like saying, okay, he connected the two as conditional. If the Rebbe's Misad Yechidus'n will be in the summer, but then the Rebbe says, as far as Siddur Yechidus'n is concerned, a relative got married recently, a few weeks ago, a few months ago. The Rebbe is a relative. And
Who was
the Misad Yechidus'n was a Rav of Anash.
Who was the
I don't
relative?
know. We try to work out. I don't know who it was. And there weren't that many weddings in those days.
Yeah.
Chalad, the Olam was not such a big crowd. And it was back and forth. My father-in-law wrote one letter, very, very sharp, saying, what do you have against me and my wife, just because I don't have a beard and my wife doesn't wear sheitel, she'd wear a hat, which again, but she, and they are 100% yours. They'll go wherever the Rebbe sends them, whether he said, and he sent the letter off. He had made a copy. He used to make a copy. All his diaries were based on letters he sent to the Rebbe. And my mother-in-law saw the letter, and she said it's too sharp, whatever he wrote. And she made him write the next day an apology letter.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have any. Now, a bit of background, which I believe, if people say, what's the reason? You can't, on the Rebbe, try to understand, you can't understand. And if you do understand, I promise you, it's not the whole story. Like it says in Tanya, the time in Torah, whatever time it gives, whatever reason it gives, there's something deeper as well. A deeper reason. But I want to give a bit of background. When my father-in-law was being this Karev, it was through a tragedy. He came from Geza Chabad, but they knew Chabad meant Vidavon Sechari and Yutes Kislev Yom Tov. So he told me those two things.
We just had an article in the Her exploring the story.
That's right, yeah, recently.
Of how your father-in-law came.
Yeah. And so that was the connection, but he became closer. And the Rebbe told him to become active in the Manchester Beth Din. It's like the Vara'ir. That's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And he got involved. And the Rebbe told him to work on making peace between that Manchester Beth Din and it was a whole board, like it was a whole vara'ir, and the Machziki Hadas, which was like the Charedim. And there was a lot of tension between them, and he succeeded in that. They had peace, and they had coexistence. Adayim Hazeh. Manchester's Bezdin is a very frum Bezdin. It's a good hechsher. But he made that peace between them. And he in order to do that, he was active, and eventually he was elected the president of it was called the Manchester Shechita Board. That's what it was called. And he was the president. He made a chartered flight and brought the wedding over to New York in the hope and anticipation, but there was no confirmation that there was going to be Masad Yechidus'n. And the wedding invitations, there was going to be a Sheva Brachos on Thursday. The Chasna was on Sunday, Tesvav Tammuz. And on Thursday, Yutes Tammuz, there was going to be a Sheva Brachos for the public. So the invitation to the Sheva was over 300 people there. It was a big, like a wedding, with a mechitza, with everything. But when he came to New York, it was a Sunday, it was Chodesh Tammuz, Tov Shin Chav Gimel. And he would always have a Yechidus as soon as they arrived, and then he would have a longer Yechidus while they were here, like this time would be Hey Tammuz, and one before they left. So when he went in on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, that Sunday, my father-in-law said to the Rebbe, you don't have to answer me now, but you must be Masad Yechidus'n. He said, "There's no." He said, "I cannot justify. I'm the president of the board of deputies, of the Shechita board, and there's no way I can justify. It's a patchim ponim to the whole shtot that I took the wedding out of that city. The only justification would be because the Rebbe was going to be Masad Yechidus'n." The Rebbe didn't answer, but he smiled. That was Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, Sunday. Hey Tammuz, my wife and I went in Yechidus, never told me what to learn. Shakidusha did things to learn before the wedding, those 10 days that were left. The Rebbe asked me, when are you going to the oil? Before the chas, I said, I'm going, I go, everyone used to go, the whole oilam went to the oil 3 times a year. Yud Shvat, Yud Beis Tammuz, and Erev Rosh Hashanah. Those were the 3 times that everybody went with buses and everything. So I said, I'll go with everybody, but it's an Indian to go on the Yom HaChuppah, and he said, Rebbe said yes. And then the Rebbe asked me, why is the chuppah was supposed to be 7:30 at night or something, 8 o'clock at night, late. Why is it so late? Is the hall not available before? So I said, I wasn't part of the arrangement anyway. So I'll speak with your future father-in-law about it. And when my father-in-law went in, later on, so the Rebbe asked, why is the chuppah so late? It's Rachmanis on the Chos and the Kala to fast so long. Right. So my shver said, if you'll be Masad Yechidus'n, they don't mind fasting for 2 weeks. So there's some medafis nicht. It's not necessary. He told him to make it earlier, at 5 o'clock. It could be because on the original invitation it said 5 Shoah Chamishis anyway, in the Hebrew one, the Hebrew side. I don't know. That's again speculating on the reason. But the Rebbe, of course, when the Rebbe wrote a Piksav, he underlined Bidiyuk, 5 o'clock sharp. And it's interesting because the Rebbe was at the oil on the day of the wedding. And it was 3:15, and the Rebbe was not back yet from the oil. And there would always be mincha before. It was 4 o'clock. And my shver said, you can say the Maima at the Kabbalah's Panim, which was in 770.
So the Rebbe said he's going to sound like Yechidus'n.
The Rebbe said that he had to send out a new invitation to everybody about the change of time and venue of the chuppah. And the Rebbe said it should not mention his name, the Rebbe's name, on that, and you should not take it to the printer. There was no quick print and all these things that you have today, homemade. You had to go to Rabbi Motel Schusterman. He did a very, very, very big favor because he had jobs. And the Rebbe said we're not allowed to go to him before Thursday. That's Yud Beis Tammuz. Sunday is the wedding. So you have to print a revised invitation and send it out. It should reach everybody in New York and wherever it is before Shabbos. They should know not to come to the chuppah in Glendale Jewish Center at 7 o'clock at night.
Right. Fine, so you're waiting and...
We had a separate
So it's the Kabbalah's Panim and...
We are pleased to tell you of the following changes.
So back to the Chasana. So it's the Kabbalah's Panim and your father-in-law says the same.
With the 770. And then, so it was already 4 o'clock, and my Shvester said to Maima, everything went on. It's all on tape, by the way. They made it tape. My brother-in-law made tape even of the chuppah. And it was then about 4:45. And my Shver said to Rabbi Chadakov, we have to go. And Rabbi Chadakov said, the Rebbe is not back from the Oihel. And when he comes back, it's unprecedented that the Rebbe should have a chuppah before Mincha. The first thing the Rebbe does when he comes back is davens Mincha. When he comes back from the Oihel. My father-in-law said, the Rebbe said 5 o'clock, and he underlined it twice, I think. About 5 to 5, or 4 minutes to 5, Rabbi Krinsky drives up with the car, quickly parks. The Rebbe goes out, and meanwhile, the chuppah is set up, and everyone's ready, everything's all set to start. And the Rebbe told Rabbi Chadakov, the chuppah is first. And it was started 4:59 and 60 seconds.
B'diuk.
Exactly, b'diuk. Exactly. It's interesting because 7 minutes after the chuppah ended, it was a beautiful sunny day. There was a downpour, which lasted for about maybe a half hour, just after the chuppah. Oh. And so the Rebbe said, now you want, b'derech hateva, on Wednesday night, there was a Tomim getting married. Rabbi Leibel Volovik, the Lama Refuah Shlema Kreva, in Montreal. And there's so many different things mixed together here. And he had wanted the Rebbe, he had no father, the Rebbe was his father. Now, they were in Yechidus'n the same night, because the wedding was going to be, there was no Yechidus'n until then probably, on Yudal, no, it was going to be on Yud Aleph Tammuz, Wednesday, 4 days before our wedding. And the Chala was a Borough Park girl, and there was a brother who was a little bit going his own way. And they asked the Rebbe what to do. And the Rebbe said, invite Shmuel Lew to the wedding and introduce him to your son. And tell him, that's me, to invite that son, the Kala's brother, to my wedding on Sunday. Uh-huh. And which I did and they did. There's so many sensitivities involved here. Right. And so we were at, and Leibel was at my wedding. When they picked me up on their shoulders, they picked him up also. Mm-hmm. We were two chassanim at the wedding. Right. And he made Sheva brachas at our wedding. Leibel Volovik. And in the wedding pictures is that bacha, that brother. Whatever, but the Rebbe said you're not going to. I went to Rabbi Motel Schusterman. He said, I said the Rebbe said, and he did it. Right. He was 100% in his rights to say, yeah, you can't. I've got a whole backlog here. Yeah, and he did.
Okay, so mipnei Kaitzer Hayiriya, we can continue talking the whole day and night for many days.
There's so much more. You can go down the avenue of each of these things.
But I want to conclude that, I mean, the Rebbe had so much, I would call it investment.
So much?
Investment in you and in your mishpacha. And what does that mean for you? And what does it mean for all the chassidim that hear about it? What do you think?
I mean, this is very, here is a Yechidus'n I had, which haunts me in a sense, like in Tavshin Chav Hey, when the Rebbe told me off for not learning as I could in the koilel. Wasting, I don't remember how he got on to the top. By the way, whenever I was in Yechidus'n with my wife, in those days, the Rebbe would speak in English. There were two exceptions. One was this one I'm going to tell you about, and one was the night before we went on Shliach. But the Rebbe would speak in English, exclusive to my wife. Sometimes he asked something, and I would answer in Yiddish, and the Rebbe would translate. So since you said, the Rebbe would translate what I said into English for the benefit of my wife. But here the Rebbe spoke only in Yiddish, and told me off very strongly. And he said, "Ich hab zugesagt der Schwei." He said, "I promised your father that you're going to become this, that, I remember, like a lamb and all the different things that you're going to be." And the Rebbe said, "Ich kann manage wie zusagen." That was the third time when the Rebbe told me it depends on you. So I can only promise. Which is an interesting sentence. What do you mean I can only promise? If the Rebbe promises. But the Bechira is never taken away. You have to remember, at the end of the day, your life is yours. The Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu Shebedereinu, it's got the whole Sedra Koyach. It's about what you do. And those Koyachas are there. If you don't ignore them. And the Rebbe said, these words, Ich can manage with zusagen. I can only promise. In other words, depends what you're going to do with it. It's not just a once-off, by the way. It's your whole life. Every day, there are probably several or countless opportunities in everyone's life when you have to make a choice. Machshava, dibo, amaisa. And you get the koiches, milmaila. But ich can manage with zusagen. Rebbe can promise and can give it, but he's promising that you have that potential to live it. And I was in a state of shock. In fact, as soon as we came out of Yechidus'n, my wife says, "What was he talking about in Yiddish there?" So I said, "He's telling me that I'm not learning."
There was a report that you weren't learning?
What?
There was a report that you weren't learning?
Was it? Was somebody reported to them? Obviously.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You didn't have to be a genius,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so and I just stood. I don't know what I should have said, but the Rebbe said, "Von dein Schweigen wird gar nicht werden," he told me. Your silence will achieve nothing. Those are the words. Von dein Schweigen wird gar nicht werden. And it was about 40 years before I even told over that story. That's from the, I got a whole podcast of which I don't take as first choice what to say, but you ask what do you feel when I'm feeling the way I should be feeling, and not schweigen. Mendel Futterfass is interesting. Told me after Chav Zayin Oder, and he was in the yeshiva in London, and he was farbrengen, and I was there, and he told me to speak in English. I should speak in a farbrengen in front of Reb Mendel Futterfass in Yitom Chetmimim. I couldn't, and he told me off, really, very, very sharp, then. But then I met him privately a few days later, and he said, now is the time that you don't hear the Rebbe's voice. We have to talk. We have to be the Rebbe's voice. You've got to, you got to talk. So what I do when I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing is to try to share, even though it's sometimes a very personal and intimate memories and recollections. But I feel that let somebody else take it and run with it and use it. So whatever, no one could live up. The Rebbe was perfect as a Rebbe. Look amongst the Rebbeim, no vacation, he was predictable, close. Like there's a sikh of the Rebbe about Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ani Yodea, that they have a chelik in the korban in Pashtas Koirach. I know that they have a share in the korban tomid, and he told the Eibush, don't take it. And why does they have a share? It had to be given over Moshe Yofa. And that's a niyadea. Moshe Rabbeinu knows that besides the community, each individual has a role they can play. And each individual should play that role. And should be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so I feel that by sharing the positive, focusing on the 612, that whatever's there, I can help other people. I can't think around, I'm not... the consequence is not what's important. The important thing is, what can I do today? This is my lifetime. And if I can do something which can help somebody to be what they're supposed to be, that's what I'm supposed to do. And that somebody, it's not just me. I'm in the chinuch of high school kids. I tell that to 13-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 15. They said, I have a sibling who's this, that. I said, your behavior can make a difference. Every person, by taking themselves seriously in a happy way, can feel empowered and can really make a difference. So that's how we bring Mashiach. It's like step by step, the pieces are falling into place with all the problems, with all the issues outside and inside, whatever. One can see that things are happening. We don't have to write the whole script, exactly how and when and what. But it's happening. And that's how we're bringing Mashiach.
Shekech. Thank you very much, Rabbi Lew.